Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
If the game is rigged, change the game.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Game changer, game changer, game changer, game changer. The Game Changer Radio Network.
Turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right. Fade to Black is back. It's the Wednesday edition today. This is Wednesday, April 8th. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. 98 days into the new year. 267 days left. We are live from the City of Angels Studios right here. Downtown Burbank, California. COA Vapor, makers of the Fade to Black e-juice. Do you vape? Do you vape? You've got to check out Fader Loops. Oh yeah, Fade to Black e-juice. Just go to the COA banner at www.jimmychurchradio.com. You can use the promo code Jimmy for the Fader Not special. Free shipping. All right. For KJCR and the Game Changer Network, KGRA The Planet, I'm your oh-so-humble host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, we have Richard effing Dolan. Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan's back with us. Very special show tonight. Taking your calls to the number is 323-825-5045. You can Skype in Fade to Black 14. I'd like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, far and near. Welcome. This is Fade to Black. Big proud salute to the men and women in uniform fighting the good fight all around the world. For without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us. And you could not hear me right now. I need you to think about that for a second. I really do. Let's get this show cracking. Faders.org, www.faders.org. Become a Fader Not today. It's free. It's fun. Become a Fader Not. It's a warm, wonderful family. Get your Fader gear. Not 15 is the code. 10% off all of that Fader gear. You can just go to faders.org. There is a banner at www.jimmychurchradio.com. All right, we're winding it down. We're getting close here. 2 days is Hangar 1. That'll be this Friday, April 10th. Premieres on History Channel, 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. And we are about 6 weeks away from Contact in the Desert, May 29th through the 31st. Richard will be doing both of those, and also the Ozark UFO conference, which is kicking off this Friday. So I think he's going to miss the Hangar 1. He's on TV so much. It's no big deal, probably. But so Richard's got a busy schedule up in front of him, and I think he's also doing the Canadian run. I think he's doing that world tour up there too as well. We'll talk to Richard about all of that in just a few short minutes. Okay? I'm going to continue to say this until I'm just tired. 4 weeks ago, KGRA and Fade to Black started our quest to take over the world. This week it continues. Tonight it continues with Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan has his show on KGRA as well. And we are going to continue to take over the world one day at a time. All right? Now, let's get this show cracking. Are you ready, Fadernauts? Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. If you can hear me, if you're a new listener, you're a first-timer, and, they come in by the hundreds, if not thousands, every single day, brand new, and never leave, as they should. If you've never listened to the show, this is a long-form conversation show, and we are interactive on multiple different platforms. We're interactive over in the Spreaker chat room. We've got the KGRA chat room, too, as well. I was hanging out there last night. And Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. And then in TweetDeck, and I don't know if anybody uses just regular Twitter anymore, unless it's on your cell phone, I guess. But TweetDeck and hashtag F2B, that'll pull up the sandbox for you and come and hang out with all of us Fadernauts. I try to follow Twitter as close as I can all night long. So that's what you want to do, okay? And hashtag F2BQ is the questions column just for me and the guest. So if you got a question, pop it in there. Hashtag F2BQ. That's F and the number 2, BQ. So follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. All right, let's go. Let's get the show cracking. I'm ready. And for all of you new listeners, I'm just going to say this. I haven't said this in a while. Every day, what stirs my soul? Hopefully, what stirs my soul stirs yours. That's the key. It's the key to this show. Its very existence is, what gets me going. Every single day. It's the rock and roll. I got to have the rock and roll in my life. It's always a good movie. And right now, is anybody watching Dig, by the way? Is anybody watching the TV show Dig? Anybody see the latest episode last night? I've been watching that lately. So anyway, and music, movies, and and I go through birthdays. And so I'm going to do that right now. And so who is on this birthday list? Who makes the birthday list? Well, it's people that just affect me. That's who makes the list. It's always cool stuff. It is. But that's what we're going to do now. I got email last week. Dude, why do you do? It's a conspiracy show, man. It's a conspiracy show about UFOs. Why do you do the birthdays? I got like 2 emails like that in 2 years, actually. 2. One was last week. I'm like, man, it's somebody that just doesn't get it. You don't get it, do you? But I think for most of us, you get it. You get exactly where I'm going. Sets the mood, sets the tone. All right, so let's get the show cracking. Today, Izzy Stradlin is 53 years old. Izzy Stradlin. And you notice I didn't say former, GNR, Guns N' Roses. I didn't do that because Izzy, he's his own guy. Izzy, we all know who Izzy is. I didn't have to say Stradlin, did I? Izzy Stradlin, 53 years old. Really cool dude. Hasn't really done much. He had that one band right after a GNR. I kind of plopped around a little bit. But I guess he's just enjoying those songwriter mechanicals. Julian Lennon today is 52. Again, not doing too much lately. Looking more and more like his dad every single day, though. Today, Biz Markie. I can't say that with a straight face. Biz Markie is 51 years old. And that's right. Biz Markie makes the list because that song, Just a Friend, is timeless. And we will all, whenever that comes on the radio, we all sing along with it, don't we? One day I'll sing it for you. Actress Robin Wright is 49 years old. And you know why she makes the cut. That's obvious. Played Princess Buttercup in The Princess Bride. Actress Patricia Arquette. How does an Arquette make the list? 47 years old. She makes the list because of True Romance. It's obvious. John Schneider. Most people don't remember who John Schneider is. John Schneider is 55 years old. He played Bouduc on The Dukes of Hazzard and also had a pretty successful country singing career. Had a bunch of hits, top tens, number ones. John Schneider. He was the blonde. He was Bouduc. Our dead guy's birthday today are, moment of silence, please, Paul Gray, bassist Paul Gray of the band Slipknot. Yes, I like Slipknot. I love my Slipknot once in a while. 1972 to 2010, died at the age of 38. On May 24th in 2010, he was found dead in a motel room. Later, autopsy reports said that he died from a morphine overdose. There was allegedly a needle or two in the room, pills all over the floor. Autopsy results said it was a morphine overdose. And then in September of 2012, Gray's physician, and now I removed the doctor's name from this, even though it is public. I removed it. So I inserted physician. Was charged with involuntary manslaughter relating to Gray's death, as well as the deaths of at least 7 other people. He was found not guilty. That's why I took his name out. All right. Oh, who just did that? Hey, Dunbar, you are quick. Follow us on Twitter right now. You'll see a picture of, there he is, man. Man, he was good. Paul Gray. And Slipknot's a good band. Different. But you know what? Good stuff. Good stuff. I like Slipknot. And you know what? And that's it. Now you get it. The new listeners. Isn't this about conspiracies and UFOs? And this guy's like cool. He's talking about Slipknot. Am I on the right? Yeah, you're in the right spot. You're in the right spot. I'm going to ask Dolan later. Somebody remind me. I'm going to ask Dolan later if he if he listens to Slipknot. He probably does. He probably does. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Everything is Fade to Black at J Church Radio. Go right now. Follow, like, and subscribe. All of the links are right there on the page. If you're at KGRA, they're all there. If you're on Spreaker, they're all there. If you're at jimmychurchradio.com, they're all there. If you're on TuneIn, they're all there. No matter where you're at, no matter TalkStream Live, no matter where you're at, it is there right now, and you can go click. So please follow, like, and subscribe. Follow the show. Participate. Everything is interactive. I pretty much return all emails. I do. Pretty much. I read all the emails that are actually sent to me. All right? All right. You can email throughout the show, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. You can also go over to the website, go to the contact page, where we use non-NSA, specially encrypted servers. All questions tonight for me or for Richard Dolan can be sent right to hashtag F2BQ in TweetDeck. All right? Let's take a quick break. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard Dolan. Tomorrow night, Fader Night. Open lines all night long. For you Fadernauts, it's the best night of the week, isn't it? Well, except for tonight. Tonight's Richard Dolan. I'm going to get down tonight with Richard. All right? I'll be back right after this short break. Stay with us.
listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Loves my Starbucks. All right, let's go. Let's get this cracking. Tonight, Richard Dolan will be with us. He's going to be with us. Very special show. We got a lot of stuff we're going to cover tonight with Richard. He's a busy man, too. You're going to be taking your calls as well. 323-825-5045. You can Skype in Fade to Black 14. Tomorrow night is Fader Night. Open lines all night long. You know, it's kind of funny. What I do all week is we do the show. I mean, which is what we do. We do the show every single night and get great guests, great calls, and hanging out with everybody. But we do it just so we can get Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday out of the way. That's what we do. We're just trying to get to Thursday. Just trying to get to Fader Night. We can just get to Fader Night in one piece. Life is good. It's going to be all good. All right, let's get to the news that you know nothing about. Mars has been known to host water. Now, listen. I need you Fadernauts right now. Anybody listening to the show. I'm looking at my email right now. Okay, I'm checking out the email. I want to see email pop. What I need from you and you Fadernauts is to answer this question because I'm going to read you this breaking news and the content of this, and then I need you to turn around and answer this question for me. The ice that is on Mars. The ice that is on Mars. Okay? What's it made of? Is it water or not? Is it carbon monoxide? Is it something else? I need to know because I have been following this and wondering about this and talking about this on the show for a long time. And now this story breaks today and I'm scratching my head. So here we go. Mars has been known to host water. Now, for the first time, scientists have measured the territory of its glaciers, which crisscross the planet, hiding beneath layers of dust. It's enough to cover the entire planet, check this, in 1 meter of ice. The entire planet. The findings, published in Volume 41 of the Journal of Geophysical Research Letters, build on previous knowledge and the scars left by the water that used to flow on the red planet millions of years ago. The presence of polar ice caps, as well as chemical elements that tell the story. Underneath all that, however, lay vast expanses of frozen water invisible from space. Allegedly. Or not. Or rather. that were only slightly visible with our satellites, but science, they just didn't know if it was made from frozen water or CO2. Then NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter made the call. It was water ice after all. This is what is written and released in this paper. Next up is determining the thickness, or whether the glaciers resembled anything we're used to here on Earth. A Copenhagen-based team of Niels Bohr Institute proposed a formula to surmise the above. It employs existing models of ice flow combined with what we could see from space. The two approaches combined, they allow for the eventual calculation of the volume of ice in the glaciers. I get that. But is it water or not? Is it water or not? Now listen to this quote. We have looked at radar measurements spanning 10 years back in time to see how thick the ice is and how it behaves. Glacier is, after all, a big chunk of ice, and it flows and gets a form that tells us something about how soft it is. When then compare this with how glaciers on Earth behave, and from what we have been able to make models for the ice flow, you know, and this comes from Nana Berjolt Carlson of the Niels Bohr Institute Center of Ice and Climate. So they are de facto saying right now that it's water. If that is the case, and we are not sending our probes to the ice and melting the ice and seeing what is there, and seeing if that is the case and it's not CO2, I say we storm NASA. Let's storm JPL. Let's get 100,000 people together and start knocking down some walls, because we are doing the wrong thing. Russia's internet watchdog, now say this really quick for me, Roskomnadzor, has announced it would not only block banned data on the internet at prosecutors' request, but also find and block all of its copies in various social networks. That's right, hardcore censorship of anything that the prosecutors don't want out there. It doesn't matter what it is. The plans are included in a draft instruction prepared by Roskomnadzor and revealed on Tuesday, earlier today, by Mass Circulation Daily Izvestia. The authors of the document emphasize that the primary purpose is to quickly neutralize the calls for mass unrest and illegal mass events that can be quite effective when communicated over the internet. Currently, Russian prosecutors have to file in a separate request for each example of illegal data they discover on the web, what they call illegal data, by the way, asking them to block the page until its further fate is decided by a court. But not now. The new instruction introduces constant monitoring of websites, social networks, and anything else with an objective of blocking not only the initial illegal data, but also all of its copies and reposts. How do you like that? Unbelievable. Absolutely zero restrictions. No checks and balances. Just some guy, some prosecutor that says, you know what? Take this down. The public doesn't need to read it. The world doesn't need to read this. We don't like it. Hardcore censorship going down in Russia. Hardcore. The United States Aerospace Defense Military is planning to move its communications equipment back to, are you ready? Cheyenne Mountain. That's right. The iconic nuclear Cold War era bunker, which was abandoned nearly a decade ago. That's right. The head of the agency announced today the Cheyenne Mountain bunker in Colorado Springs was first built in 1965 to resist a Soviet nuclear attack. It was a key center for the United States Space Command and North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, which scanned Canadian and U.S. airspace via a worldwide system of missiles. The site was abandoned in 2006 because of costs. And since then, the complex has been merely on warm standby. I think they used it for like Stargate, SG-1, and a couple of other TV shows. It was actually the backdrop to television and movie sets. That's right. And that meaning they only staff it when required. Now, NORAD and the U.S. Space Command have decided to move back to the bunker. Admiral William Gortney, chief of NORAD and Northern Command, said it was necessary to safeguard sensitive sensors and servers from a potential electromagnetic pulse attack, an EMP. Last month, the U.S. Department of Defense announced a $700 million contract with Raytheon Technical Services to start work on Cheyenne Mountain and getting it cranked back up. $700 million. I'm kind of glad, though. NORAD is rad. A space company owned by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has finished work on a rocket engine for suborbital spaceships that they expect to begin flight tests later on this year in 2015. It's called Blue Origin. The so-called New Shepard spaceship is designed to fly 3 people and or a mix of passengers and payloads to altitudes about 62 miles above Earth. It will launch from Blue Origin's West Texas facility near Van Horn, Tejas, southwest of El Paso. Testing and development of the rocket engine, called the BE-3, has been completed. The last major milestone before the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen-fueled motor is attached to the New Shepard capsule for flight. Blue Origin President Rob Meyerson told reporters on a conference call today. Privately owned, Blue Origin has not started selling tickets yet or has released pricing information. Other companies, including SpaceX and Boeing, they're skipping the whole suborbital space flight deal altogether. Yeah, they're not interested in that. They're developing systems that's going to take you and I straight into orbit. And I've often wondered, it's one thing to go 62 miles up. I get that suborbital, get to see the circumference, get to see the look down, see the stratosphere, look up, see the atmosphere, and see, and see the circumference of the Earth and the blackness of space and the blueness of the Earth and whatever, and you get to see it. I get that. But is that the same? Are you going to pay a couple of $100,000 to do that or whatever they're charging for it? Or do you just want to go straight into space? Now, and also, we all know I've got a really, really bad claustrophobia issue. Could you, and I'm Van Horn, we're neighbors. That's from Jim Kenny. Would you do that? Would you buckle in, get a suit on, maybe even you got to do that. And would you get all claustrophobic like that? You know how small that is. It's not big. You're not getting up and walking around. What about a bathroom? What do you do? But anyway, would you do that? Would you get all claustrophobic and head up and come back? Man, I just don't know if I could. I don't know. I went to the Smithsonian, and at the Smithsonian, the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. So, and I suppose there's other space capsules around, but you can go there, and they have Mercury, they have Gemini, they have Apollo, and Apollo's big. And you go and you look. Now, go look at a Mercury capsule, and look how small that is. Now, imagine you sitting in the chair that you're sitting in right now. Imagine it being as small as possible, tight. And then the ceiling touches your head, and then the walls touch your shoulders, and then they close the door. You have no room to stretch, move, do anything. You're in a sitting position. You can't move. You can't do any. You are in. You can't do anything. It's that small. Could you do that? Close that hatch, seal it up. Could you do it? I don't know, man. I don't know if I could do it. Hey, Dave C., I see you. He says, I'm going to try this again. He's in He's in Twitter. I'm going to try this again. What's up, faders? What's up, Dave C? This is Fade to Black. Tonight, Richard Dolan will be with us. Special show tonight with Richard. Right when we come back off of this break. If you'd like to talk to Richard, we're going to take your calls, 323-825-5045. Something he doesn't do too often. So, if you'd like to talk to Richard, tonight's your chance. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be back right after this.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Today, everybody, the Fadernauts and planet Earth is vaping. And I'm very proud to announce our very own e-juice. When we were approached by City of Angels Vapor about Fade to Black e-juice, I wanted to make sure that it was the very best and that the flavors were something that I could create myself. And we did just that. Introducing Fade to Black Fader Loops. This will take you right back to Saturday morning cartoons and your favorite bowl of fruity, loopy cereal. Just click on the banner or go to www.coavapor.com. Enter the promo code Jimmy for the Fader Not Special. That's www.coavapor.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're of the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Attention, all Fadernauts. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's JimmyChurchRadio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go back, Lee Tappy. All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Tonight, Richard Dolan is with us for the duration. The Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. If you have any questions for myself or Mr. Dolan, you can do that at hashtag F2BQ. And I am ready. Let's get the show cracking. Richard Dolan is one of the world's leading researchers and writers on the subject of UFOs and believes that they constitute the greatest mystery of our time. He is the author of UFOs and the National Security State, Volumes 1 and 2, Chronology of a Cover-Up, 1941 and 1973, and The Cover-Up Exposed, 1973 to 1991. Got both books here. They're worn out and dog-eared. He has also co-authored a speculative book on the future, AD After Disclosure, with Bryce Zabel. And in 2014, Richard published UFOs for the 21st Century Mind. Love that book, too, as well. He also hosts his own weekly radio show, The Richard Dolan Show, right here on KGRA Radio. As a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM. When I hosted Coast to Coast the last time, it was kind of funny. And Richard, I know you're listening to me right now. They said, so who do you want to have on first? I said, Richard Dolan. Nope, can't do it. He's on with Nori next week. I was like, it killed me, struck me down. He is currently featured on several television series and documentaries, including Ancient Aliens, Close Encounters, and Hangar 1, The UFO Files, which premieres this Friday, April 10th, 10 p.m. on the History Channel. I would like to welcome back our good friend, Richard effin' Dolan. Richard.
Hello, Jimmy. Glad you got that effing in there.
Yeah, man. That
made me happy.
That's as close as I'm going to get, my brother.
Yeah, I hear you.
That's as close as I'm going to get. Hey, Richard, I don't know if you were listening to the monologue, the warm-up where I do the news, but I was talking about, have you ever been to, I'm sure you have, the Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, I have, actually, but not in a while. Probably at least 10 years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Well, there was one thing that struck me there, and we're talking about all of these, SpaceX and Richard Branson and,
right.
civilians going up into space. And I have seen Spaceship One. I took some pictures with myself and Branson standing next to it out here at the Mojave
cool.
Desert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to post those. I got to find those and post those. They're really cool. You can see how skinny he is and how truly obese I am. But anyway, what you do...
you're just big boned, Jimmy.
I'm big boned. But what you see... the way it looks in a photograph is one thing, but then when you put human bodies next to it, it's very small. I'm telling you, it is tiny. It looks very fragile and frail. But when you go to the Air and Space Museum and you look at Gemini, or you look at Apollo, or you look at the Mercury capsule, and you realize how tiny.
Those are absolutely cramped. Tiny.
Yeah,
exactly.
The Mercury could be a coffee table in your living room and wouldn't even take up space. It's
not just that, but you get the feeling they were made with cellophane and Scotch tape.
Yeah, it looks exactly like that, very thin. So,
yeah.
Would you do that? Would you get into how's your claustrophobia? Would you actually climb in that tiny little capsule, have that door closed, and stay there for a day or two or a week?
The U.S. Army used to do things like that to people. They called them sensory deprivation experiments, and people lost their mind in the process. That's actually true. I don't know. I can handle a lot of things, but I'm not sure I'd really want to handle that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and what about Spaceship One? Virgin Galactic or SpaceX? Would you do that?
I'm a convivial man about town, and I like to study and work in my office and do things by myself and even go out and do various physical exploits, but I'm not sure that I'm an astronaut. So my answer is probably, I think I'll pass.
No bathrooms, no...
Yeah, see, there you go.
Yeah, no rolling beverage carts up the aisle. Yeah.
I can't just snap my fingers for... serve me a drink? No, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I just don't think.
Honestly,
I could do it.
Let me say this: I would have. There's a part of me that would definitely enjoy a kind of on the edge adventure. No joke. With something like that, it requires a tremendous amount of training. I could see, maybe in another timeline, had I wanted to go into that kind of endeavor, maybe thinking, what the hell, I'll go for it and I'll see if I can make the team and go through the training. I mean, it would be a very, very cool thing to try. But at this stage in the game, the path that I've gone on, probably not.
You know what I would
I'm
consider?
Just putting that out there.
Yeah. It's one thing to look at the Enterprise, right? Where you can breathe. Maybe the space shuttle. You can get up and walk around, stretch your legs. Okay, I get that, but as far as these private endeavors, I just don't think I could do it. I just don't. It freaks me out. And when I'll never forget the first time I saw Mercury, and I'm thinking to myself, really, they put a guy in? It's torture. It's just
the Mercury craft from 1961. I think they started 61, 62. Yeah, they were just tiny little things. But, think of it this way. Every new phase of human exploration has been, something along those lines. Think about the early European ships that were sailing 600 years ago. These were really not large vessels at all, and they were sailing around the coast of Africa. They were sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. They were sailing across the Pacific Ocean. Took a lot of guts to do that, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Tiny and made of wood.
That's right.
And going around Cape Horn, you know.
Exactly.
So I got an email before we jump into this this evening. And again, welcome back to the program.
It's a pleasure.
I got an email from one of our UK listeners that heard you on a show over in the UK, which he didn't. Well, anyway, that doesn't matter. But said that you had referenced a conversation that you had with somebody on a train that was a contactee. Do you know what he was referring to? And can
I think I do.
He said the story was amazing, but you left him wanting, and he wanted to hear the rest of the story and what happened.
Well, if I'm remembering this correctly, this is a really crazy and freaky story. I gave a lecture a number of years ago. I was in central Iowa for a community that just kind of organized, had me out there. And after that lecture, I spoke to a woman who approached me, and she was an extremely level-headed kind of person, very logical, very intelligent, very quiet, and with a lot of trepidation. After pretty much everyone else had walked away, she told me her story about when she was in England back in the 1990s. She had been a student back at that time. And she would take the train quite a bit. I believe, I don't have this in front of me. I have the notes very clearly written down, but I think she was going to Swansea, Wales, if I'm not mistaken, out west. And she'd done this a few times, and she gets on the train this one day, and the car was absolutely packed. I mean, packed to the gills, like people standing. It was surprisingly crowded, and she gets in there, and to her further surprise, she sees an empty seat. So she gets down in the seat, and there's one seat empty that's across from her, and that's it. So to her left is a woman, to her diagonal left is another woman. And long story short, maybe I'll be able to pull up some of these details, but this was a train car that had people on here that, in this woman's opinion, were actually not human. The woman next to her, for example, had was all covered up. A lot of the people there were very much covered up. And I'm actually, as I'm telling you this story, I'm kind of looking for her story because it's just that crazy.
Well, why don't you look that up? I just pulled up the email. You pull that up.
I've got it right here.
I'm going to read you the email. He says,
I've got it in front of me here.
Okay.
Yeah.
He says, in a recent interview, I heard Richard relay a story about a friend whom, whilst traveling a certain UK rail route, had a most bizarre encounter with other people whom she suspected were not human.
That's right. This is it.
And he said it happened in Wales, somewhere near Swansea. Now, this is how he ends the email. He says, and I have recently arrived back from that part of the UK myself, and I met what I can only say and describe as some very odd people indeed. So what happened?
How about, well, so she, actually I remembered this pretty accurately. She gets into the car, it's full, she sits down, and as you can imagine, you can visualize this. The compartments were designed for 4 people each, right? And so there was one other empty seat in the whole train car, as far as she could tell. That was across from her. So to her left was a woman holding a newspaper, and she had a headscarf and gloves. And she seemed like she might have been about 50 years old or so, and she looked like she was ending a long day at the office. And this woman, the woman who told me her story, her name is Lisa. She just sits down. She says, hello, how are you? And the woman faced her with eyes that were unusually large and unusually round. The woman ethnically looked like Northern European, according to Lisa. And the colors in her eyes, she said, were brilliant. They weren't hazel. They were some combination of brown and blue, something very odd. So the woman's first response when Lisa says, hi, how are you? The woman looks at her and says, Oh. Just like that.
Okay.
Just like that. And then she gives like a little polite reply like, hello, how are you? And she had this odd accent. Now, they're in Western England. They're very close to Wales at this point. But what was strange about this woman, once she started talking to Lisa, was that she spoke in a perfect Midwestern American dialect. In fact, she sounded like someone from central Iowa, which is where Lisa had grown up. But here they are in Western England going into Wales. So there was the woman diagonal had a little more normal looking dark curly hair, she wrote here, but unusual eyes sticking out a little bit more than normal, very intense looking. And during Lisa's exchange with the first woman, this other woman's leaning forward. I mean, obviously listening, very attentive and curious. I mean, even that alone is just a little odd. You know, you're sitting down in a train car and you've got these two very odd people, right, looking at you.
Right.
And Lisa's opinion is that this just was something not normal about it. Now, that woman never spoke, but she moved her head and her mouth in ways that were somehow strange, and it was all very unsettling. So now she starts looking around the car. The train's moving. There's a young man about 30 years old. He's standing. He's reading a magazine. He smiles at her. He goes back to reading. Another man, just maybe 8 feet away, is sitting 1 or 2 rows away in an aisle seat, and he's looking directly at Lisa. Seems ordinary, maybe in his mid-40s, bald on top. He's got a paunch in his belly. And he had a white T-shirt, jeans, black leather jacket, no glasses. And this is where things get strange.
Oh, they're not strange. They're not strange already.
No,
okay.
no. She looks at this man's left index finger. You have to understand, when she was telling me this story, her level of meticulousness was extreme. And then I followed up and asked her to write this all out in an email, so I've got everything accurate. So she looked at his left index finger, and what she noticed is that the finger was unraveling. The finger. So the finger had a seam, just like cloth would have. And she's looking at this carefully, and this is not a glove. So what she saw unraveling, and it was not like a medical suture, but it was thread. And I asked her several times. I said, well, was this a glove? She's like, no. I mean, I'm telling you, this was not an ultra tight fitting glove. This guy, it was his hand. She had great eyesight. She said she knew what she was seeing. So the skin of this man's hand appeared to be like very silky and definitely synthetic.
Wow.
In other words, what she said to me is that he seemed to be wearing a human suit.
Wow.
So she's looking at him. He's looking at her. And just like the 2 women in the booth with her, he had a very unusual look in his eyes. And then he turns away, looks out the window. So at this point, she starts feeling lightheaded. And she said to me, almost as if my brain were paralyzed. So she starts feeling physically ill. So something's happening to her. And she's wondering, it was so bad, she actually was wondering if she had a stroke. But she was like a woman in her mid-20s, early 20s at the time.
Right.
So then she has this realization that this man is not human, and neither the people around her in the train car. She panics briefly, and she decides, I'm getting the hell off this train.
Right.
Next stop, no matter what, I don't care how far I am from Swansea, I'm gone. So she's looking at the strange guy with the finger that's unraveling. He's fidgeting. He's looking uncomfortable. The train comes to a stop. All right, at the next station, and she gets to her feet, but the guy beats her to it in a flash. He gets up and he leaves the train at the opposite end of the car. He's gone. So she says, all right, I'm going to stay on the train. So she sits back down. So, but this encounter's not over. So now he's off the train and he's on the platform and he's walking in the crowd, and he sees her through the window and he's staring at her, holding his gaze as he walked by. And she's now looking at his clothes. Clothes don't fit. Somehow everything's out of proportion with his body. His eyes changed somehow. She couldn't really tell me exactly how, but she said to me somehow his eyes seemed different. Before this guy is gone from view, the scarfed woman next to her looks at him. And as she's looking at him, she's holding up her newspaper, which directly blocks the side of her face from Lisa's view.
Right.
So like I mean, what it would seem like is that she would be maybe communicating in some way with this guy, right? And the woman diagonal with the dark curly hair is also watching this man as he walked by. So now the train starts moving again. The scarfed woman turns to Lisa. I'm thinking, apparently, like this scarfed woman feels like a need to explain this thing. So she says to Lisa in her central Iowa Midwestern accent, where they're here, approaching Wales, she says, "We've been here for many, many years."
Out of the blue.
We've been here for many, many years. So now, and when Lisa was telling me the story, she says, like, what was wrong with me? Because, like, at the time, she's interpreting this to mean, like, we, the British, have been here a long time. But obviously, that's not what was going on. This woman did not have an English or British accent in any way. But like Lisa's brain was just not working. And again, she's a really smart person, but she just wasn't. The only other thing she remembered from this woman, and it's kind of sketchy, was something about star being or star child. I mean, she literally remembers that. So now we're not at the end because it gets even creepier.
Oh, man.
The next stop is approaching. So she's, for whatever reason, she's not afraid anymore. She's feeling a little bit safe, a little bit relaxed. Despite, she still feels that she's with aliens here on this train. She hasn't forgotten that, but she's decided, it's cool. I'm here with aliens on the train. I'm just going to roll with it. But here's what happened now. Train comes to the next stop. Now, remember, this is an incredibly crowded train car. At the stop, every single person on the car, we're talking 30 or 40 people in all, stand up in exact unison as one person. Shoom.
What?
And not only that, within seconds, every one of them was out of the car. There was no jostling. There was no sounds. We're talking an exceptionally rapid and orderly exit from the train car. They can't do it this good in Japan. Whatever they did was like out of control. They're just like actually totally under control. Exactly orderly, efficient. And it was so fast that she couldn't actually remember the departure of the two women in her booth. And in her own words, she said it was the most organized, efficient departure from a train I've ever seen. Yeah, obviously. She noticed that the guy who'd been reading a magazine and who had smiled at her was acting like a chaperone to the group. In her opinion, he was totally human, and there was a young woman who was with him. She seemed totally human. Everyone else seemed odd and not quite human. And the next thing she knows, she's sitting in a completely empty train car, completely empty. And she was really disoriented. Like, she couldn't remember what stop they got off on. I kept asking that question. Can you remember? She couldn't remember. She had a lot of different memory lapses. And her only excuse is perhaps my brain was shut off. That's exactly what she said to me. That's basically it. And then the other strange thing about this is that this happens, I know you've heard this too. Many people, when they have a bizarre encounter, it leaves their mind. It just somehow goes away. It's like it never happened, at least for a certain period of time.
Sure.
And then it hits them later. And that happened to her. So for the remainder of the trip, she's not even thinking about it. She goes back to her university dorm. She's just hanging out. And then suddenly, zoom, this realization washes over her like, my God. She spoke to one other student who said he had heard rumors of a community in the UK that had sprung up from nowhere. That was his words. Whatever that means. I mean, basically what he says is the people who live there never opened their doors, were never seen anywhere, and who knows? He doesn't know the name. He didn't know the name of the town. She doesn't know the name of the town. This is like a mystery town somewhere in the western part of England, near the border with Wales, where this presumably happened. Crazy. That's the story. I mean, the thing is, she's responsible. She's a logical kind of person, I have to say.
I'm speechless. I would have paid money to let her tell me that story, because I'm sure in firsthand, your mind must have been blown. In the first person, I mean, listening to her recount this, because I'm listening to you tell the story, and I'm getting a little freaked out. And it's also, it doesn't sound like a story I've heard before. It doesn't sound repeated. It doesn't sound folklorish.
No, it really doesn't. Wow. And I can tell you, right, listening to her, I enjoyed meeting her. And then after I met with her, I contacted her and I wrote out, because I'd had some notes, and I wrote everything out and I sent it to her and I said, tell me how accurate or not this is. I do that frequently with people. And then she wrote back and she filled in a lot of the blanks, and I have as complete an account of it as I think is possible at this point. And she's very meticulous. She has a master's degree in literature. She's very, very cultured, very educated.
Do you, I'm going to ask you two questions. We're up against a break, as you know, and we'll pick up after the break. But two questions. One, do you listen to the band Slipknot? Do you know who they are?
I don't think so.
Oh.
It's like I don't.
Okay. Well, that answers that question. And the next question, what was the last song that you listened to, that you played?
Earlier today, I was just playing Deacon Blues by Steely Dan.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, I love them.
Well, you know what? Yeah,
before that, the Brian Jonestown Massacre. Do you listen to them at all?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Now, I have often said if my Desert Island CD would be Steely Dan Asia.
And that's a work of genius.
Yeah, it is. It's a singular type of album in that. Now, as you know, I'm a big heavy metal guy. I love my Black Sabbath and, whatever. I'm a big heavy metal guy. Love my Judas Priest. And I know it sounds strange for somebody that comes from my kind of background to say, hey, well, you know what? Steely Dan Asia. That's if I had to listen to something for the rest of my life and that was it, I'll
tell you, man, the coolest Steely Dan is the second coolest American music. The coolest American music of all time, in my opinion, is basically like Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Bill Evans, jazz of the late 50s.
Yep.
That's like those are the coolest cats. But Steely Dan are like a close second. I listen to Steely Dan, I'm thinking these guys are like, they are boss.
Yeah, I know. And when all the Steely Dan's records are just so amazing.
They're perfect.
They are, but
all of them. I mean, Asia was a high point, but really a lot of their other albums were just beautiful.
Asia, it all came together for him, man. The stars and the moon aligned on that one.
Yeah.
You just impressed the hell out of me. That was pretty good. Okay, cool. So listen, we're up against a break. When we come back, Richard, I want to talk about the ice, or is it ice, on Mars, and the disclosure yesterday from NASA with their presentation, and we'll talk about that too as well, because they talk about water in the universe and, out there on all of these exoplanets and whether it exists or not, water. And if we have water on Mars, if it's right here, our next door neighbor, what's really going on? I want to talk to you about that when we come back.
Sure.
This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard Dolan. Hey, Richard, you're going to take calls later, right?
Sure will.
All right, there you go. There you have it. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Alternative Talk, KGRA.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. May arrives soon, and with it comes another Contact in the Desert. So join me in Joshua Tree, California, for the 3rd annual Contact in the Desert Conference, being held May 29th through the 31st. 2015 brings another awesome lineup of speakers, including publisher of Legendary Times, Giorgio Tsoukalos, New York Times bestselling author David Wilcock, journalist and conspiracy expert Jim Mars, former head of UFO Project for the MOD Nick Pope, investigative reporter Linda Moulton Howe, author and contactee Travis Walton, UFO historian Richard Dolan, and many more. You don't want to miss this. Fade to Black and KGRA will be there broadcasting live May 29th. Just visit contactinthedesert.com for tickets and information. That's contactinthedesert.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air, to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's all here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With the mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. That's right, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard effing Dolan is with us. Hey, Richard, did you follow me on Twitter yet?
I think so.
Oh, God.
Pretty sure I got you on Twitter. I'm pretty darn sure about that.
All right, man. We're trying to block up your Twitter feed. So
here's the thing. I actually, for the longest time, didn't do anything with Twitter, and I looked at it a few months ago. And I'm thinking, wow, I have these Twitter followers, and they're just hanging around, and I wasn't doing anything. I was doing no Twittering, no tweeting. So I thought I'm going to start picking up the tweets. And in fact, I intend to start doing that a little more regularly. So I will, if I haven't already followed you, I will follow you.
Hey,
I will stalk you.
I don't know if you know this, but Twitter is going to be huge.
Gonna be?
Yeah,
it's not yet. It's not big yet.
No, it's not quite there
it's
yet.
Just around the bend.
It's a rumor. It's going to take off, man. Now, one of the things that I find frustrating when it comes to Mars, here it is. We can see it. It's right there. We can see it. We can look up, and there it is, and very easy to see too. And it's there, and all of this talk over the years since we were kids about the polar ice caps, and they have ice. Well, ice to me means water, and the last time I checked, ice pretty much means water. And then over the years, as I've looked into it, then no, it's not water. It's actually it's dry ice. It's CO2. It's not water at all, and so that kind of poo-pooed the idea of water on Mars, and then the questions of NASA saying, well, is there water on Mars? I'm thinking there's ice there. So what do you mean? Is there water on? Either it's there or it isn't. And now I read this news story today, this breaking news about the amount of water that is on Mars, and if it would cover 1 meter of the entire planet. That's how much ice is there, and that it is confirmed now that it is indeed H2O. Now, that's conflicting with all the other research that I've done over the last couple of days, or the last years going back. Mm-hmm. But I dived back into it. I'm like, is this some recent, thing. Is it there or not? Because if it's there, why aren't we bombarding Mars with exploration? I mean, really researching what's going on.
We know the answer to that. Let me have a hand at that.
Take a crack at it. Fly a mission.
Right,
drop a bomb.
I mean, first of all, it is fascinating, and it's true. Apparently true. It's been confirmed anyway in the mainstream media that there is an enormous amount of water on Mars. And exactly, I read the same thing. If it were spread over the planet's surface, it would be 1 meter thick around the entire planet of Mars. It's a lot of water, and it's in frozen form, but it's there, and presumably, think about this, with technology that's a little bit more advanced than what we officially have today, we could actually go out there and probably build an underground base, use some of the water, have enough oxygen, and you actually could survive there. Now, why someone would want to is another issue, but it could be done. But the reason that it's not explored, I believe, all right, that and I have believed this for a long time. I have argued this. There's a bazillion videos I've done that are on YouTube now where people can watch this, but I have argued for a while that there is a secret clandestine space program that is in operation beyond NASA, beyond anything that we're supposed to have officially, using technology that is way beyond the official technology that exists in the NASA program.
In the public domain.
Right, in the public domain. And I've been saying this for years, and the reason that I think this is the case, first of all, we do have a UFO phenomenon that is not simply based on the surface of the planet, not simply in the atmosphere of Earth, but is also space-based. And there are many, many compelling space-based UFO encounters that have been described by American and Russian astronauts, cosmonauts, quite a few, that describe objects that are in Earth orbit. We'll just start with Earth orbit, that are not explicable, not explainable in any conventional way. A number of these. And on top of that, you've got several suggestive, I would say persuasive stories about activity on Earth's moon. Yeah, the moon, backside of the moon in particular. I could talk to you about a couple of those from individuals, a couple of whom are very well known, who've spoken to me personally. And then that leaves Mars. And there are people who have talked about so-called secret programs to Mars, and I will just state for the record that most of these people who speak about it I don't find particularly credible. But I do think that there are possibly truly anomalous things about Mars. I will state to this day that I think the Cydonia region of Mars remains interesting to me and seems to have things about it that are geometrical and not natural and do seem artificial. At least it's enough that it's worth looking into. So having said all of that, think about it. If we have an open space program that actually is open about the moon and is open about Mars, isn't there a good chance that they're going to run into what we would call the UFO phenomenon? If there's a presence on those places, it's a huge issue. I had a conversation with two prominent people associated with the American Remote Viewing Program. One was Ingo Swann, who's recently passed away. Actually, a couple of people, not just two. And another was Russell Targ, who was, along with Hal Puthoff, one of the scientists who designed it through Stanford Research Institute. Ingo told me personally his story about remote viewing the far side of the moon, or actually various coordinates on the moon, and finding activity and beings of some sort or another. Russell Targ, I've said this story a number of times. This is absolutely true. Said to me on the phone. I had a long conversation with him on one occasion a number of years ago, and he said, Richard, it was in the early 1980s, one of my jobs, I was tasked to train remote viewers at Fort Meade, Maryland, whose job was to remote view the far side of the moon. That's exactly what he said to me. And I threw back. I said, well, why would they be doing that, Russell? He said, well, why do you think? Mm-hmm. I said, well, I mean, the obvious question here, I said, were they going to be looking for E.T.? I just put that out there.
And he said,
yes, yes, they were going to be looking for E.T. That was their assignment. What
were the results of the viewings? Did he talk about that?
That was my next question.
Sure.
I said, did they find E.T.? And he said, that was not part of my assignment. I don't know. Or if he did know, he wouldn't tell me. But I will say this. I believe Russell. I firmly believe him. The context of my conversation, Russell's been very, very, very open and congenial with me over the years. I've met with him a number of times. I believe him. I believe that story. So the thing is this. If we have a program in the black budget world where they're training people to remote view the far side of the moon to look for E.T., I have to assume they have a reason to think there's E.T. there. And this is 30 years ago in the 1980s. Think of it this way. There's a secret space program. If there are ETs on the far side of the moon, if there are ETs on Mars, let's just say if there are, then there is, by definition, going to be our own secret space program so that this can be studied and interacted with in a classified manner. There's no way that those people in on this secret are going to want to let the rest of the world in. They will have a classified space program. And regarding Mars, they will constantly lie about Mars. They will constantly hide that from the public view because, in their view, there's just no way safely to get into it. But they have to go through the motions because we have a world here that says, well, we got to go to the moon. We have to go to Mars. And they're like, yeah, they'll do it. But then they have to lie their asses off in the process. Well, you may not say the word ass, but I can say it as your guest. I'm allowed.
Let's go into Bizarro World for a second. Okay, so we go into Bizarro World, and in Bizarro World, 1969, we make contact with our friends, malevolent, but with our friends on the moon, and we come back and. In Bizarro World, NASA and Washington announces to the world that we found ET on the moon, and we are now communicating with them, and life is now different as we know it. That's Bizarro World, right? That Bizarro World could never, ever, ever happen. It just can't. There's just no way that Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are coming back and talking about this and telling us about what they saw, and we're going to continue going back to the moon for these reasons. That Bizarro World could never, ever, ever, ever happen.
A Bizarro World of basically founded on truth.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And that's because the UFO secret. When I wrote AD After Disclosure. That was really the moment. It was about 5 years ago. After finishing that book, it occurred to me all of the dimensions of secrecy and just why the subject is so profoundly secret and why, in the opinion of secret keepers, that it must remain that way because it is the most revolutionary subject in the world. I mean, bar none. More than 9/11, more than geoengineering or chemtrails, more than anything at all, in my opinion. The UFO secret is the most revolutionary because the implications are across the board. Science, start with science. Clearly, whatever the objects that are propelling whatever the source of energy propelling these objects, it's not petroleum. Implicit, in other words, in the solution to the UFO mystery is a post-petroleum world, and we have to wrap our brains around that for a minute because that transforms our entire global infrastructure. You know, the guys running The Secret from the 1940s and onward were well aware of this.
Sure.
They obviously knew. And if The Secret were to come out, oh, yeah, there are these flying saucers people, it would not take very long before people start asking, well, gee, what makes them go?
Right.
And we may not have been able to figure that secret out right away, but look, you know what? There's been enough work on electrogravitics and geomagnetic principles that it would not be impossible for scientists. The biggest obstacle to a new breakthrough the biggest obstacle to a breakthrough is knowing that it's possible to begin with. That's the obstacle. And if you realize that something is possible, you will find a way to achieve it. And so the UFO phenomenon takes down the petroleum industry fundamentally, and that is such a huge thing. It might be great for you and me and for people listening, but for those people who have gotten on top of the human infrastructure and basically run it and run nations and run transnational corporations, no, it's not great for them. So, and they're the ones who have vast amounts of power to manipulate civilization and manipulate society, manipulate media, manipulate the scientific community. They can do all of that. It's not impossible. So there's that. But then once the secret begins, it develops a life of its own, and it develops its own profit too, because you've got this secret. No one else has it. You can develop technology. And then the other thing is, let's say you're the president. How do you tell the world about this when you yourself probably don't have most of the answers anyway? You don't really know if these beings are hostile. You don't know if they're friendly. You don't even know much about them. You have the most awful political nightmare in the world. So no, it would be much simpler, I think, to just keep it secret, to have your people study it and figure this stuff out, and then maybe in the future decide if you want to give up the secret. But by then the secret just has too much momentum, and you've developed this entire infrastructure based on fundamental lies, and the lies develop their own momentum. It just takes on a life of its own, and it goes international.
Well, when you look at this is what is very difficult to wrap your mind around. But when you look at something as simple as commercial air travel, just take that right there in its fundamental form. You have the infrastructure of all of the airports around the world, the flights, the control systems, flight controllers, the industry itself, the construction.
Right. Exactly.
You have that. That cannot exist. What we are looking at right now, what we depend on, and what has made this world so cool and so interconnected is air travel and jet travel. But that in of itself cannot sustain itself for another, 10 years from now. It probably may not exist because there's not going to be enough oil. It'll be so expensive to fly because of the cost of that. And all of it could have been averted years ago if we would have just gone into these other technologies and figured out another way to fly and not depend on petroleum products. Because I'm telling you right now, you think there's large airplane graveyards now? Well, just imagine when every single plane that you're looking at right now can't fly.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Think about lawsuits that actually could come about as a result of the end of secrecy on UFOs. One of them would have to be in aviation.
Yes.
Yes. Any kind of air crashes, or even if not crashes, the amount of wasted fuel.
Yes.
That goes on due to the commercial aviation industry, the amount of pollution, the amount of environmental degradation, where if it comes out that within the black budget world they have known of electrogravitics or some form of anti-gravity. I mean, we're in a world in which governments have all become criminal enterprises, and I think these national security groups are totally above the law. But if this comes out, there's going to be a lot of angry people about it's just that one thing alone, basically holding our the future of our transportation industry hostage because they can't let this black budget, this advanced secret out because it's just too revolutionary for the global economy. This is what I believe is going on. This is why I call this a breakaway civilization.
Sure.
Because when you have radically advanced scientific breakthroughs that occur in the classified world, they are not allowed to seep out to the white world, as they call it, to us. So they continue to develop those secrets on their own, basically moving far, far ahead of the rest of us. Our science is held in a kind of a stasis, or we're advancing much more slowly because, you have a lot of brilliant people who are running into classified patents and they can't pursue it. This is one reason, by the way, I'm convinced, why the United States is pushing very quietly a sort of transnational legal framework. You've got the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. You've got the Transatlantic Free Trade Agreement.
Right.
Things like this, which are going beyond nations to prevent violation of intellectual copyright, for example, and things like this. I think part of the point is to to nail down classified patents, which predominantly are in the field of energy, preventing people from breaking out of the petroleum stranglehold, because the United States in particular, which dominates the world through all of its alliances, is the greatest petroleum hegemon. I mean, the U.S. uses petroleum to dominate the world, and they're going to keep it going as long as they have to, and if they take the rest of the world down with them, they'll do that.
Yeah, petrodollars. Most people don't understand. Every single barrel of oil sold and traded and pulled out of the ground and put on a ship around the world, no matter what the country is, doesn't matter. Pick the country. Doesn't matter.
It's sold in dollars.
Yeah, it goes. Right. It's done in dollars.
The petrodollar dominance is starting. It's waning, and this year we're seeing a lot of challenges to it, and I think successful ones. But it's exactly true. The U.S. has had a very, very unusual, fortunate situation since, the end of World War II, when the dollar was based on gold and the dollar was the reserve currency of the world. That went off in 1971 under Nixon, but within 2 or 3 years, the dollar was hooked to petroleum. That was a little coup by Kissinger. And basically what he arranged with the Saudis and then with OPEC was that all of their oil would be sold only in dollars to any nation, didn't matter whom. And what that meant was that the global demand for the dollar could continue because every nation had to have dollars. There was no other currency in the world that had this luxury. What that meant is that the U.S. could print all their money for all the wars that the U.S. was fighting that they could never have otherwise afforded.
Yeah, people need to wrap their head around this because it's this perpetual machine. They have to borrow the dollars from the Federal Reserve, from the banking system, which all comes back to here. The interest rates are made. They go and they buy the oil with dollars, and it turns around and perpetually profits back into the United States. And it doesn't matter if you're an enemy of the United States or a friend of the United States or somebody in between, we're profiting off of you.
And it supported a lot of the American way of life and a tremendous amount of corruption along the way. So that, but like other nations are starting to realize, this is kind of a raw deal for them. And the first nation to try to break the petrodollar system was Iraq in 2000. Saddam Hussein said, the hell with this. I'm going to sell my oil in euros. He was encouraged, by the way, by France to do that. And he began selling his oil in euros. And if that were allowed to continue, that would have served as an example for other nations to go away from the dollar. And then the result would be all of these trillions of dollars floating around the world would come back to the United States. Nations would dump the dollar, and you'd have a hyperinflation in the U.S., and that would not be good for the U.S. economy for many reasons.
And look what happened to him. And then the next guy,
within 3 years he was gone.
And then the next guy up was Gaddafi. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is all
oil?
Go ahead.
He was creating an alternate currency, a gold-based dinar, Pan-African currency that would have been a great threat to the dollar.
Yeah, huge. And he threatened. He's gone. But what does all of this have to do with ufology? It is all directly connected.
I agree. Yes, precisely, because this is exactly the kind of area of study that I've been focusing on for a number of years now. The UFO phenomenon, let's call them flying discs, flying saucers, threaten to take away the entire edifice of the petrodollar and the entire petroleum economy and replace it with something totally different. The wars right now that the United States, and it has to be said that the United States is prosecuting, and through their proxies, such as Saudi Arabia, such as Israel, a war against Iran right now, which they are obviously engaging in, a war against Russia, which they are obviously engaging in. All of this has to do with oil. It all has to do with natural gas and oil, fossil fuel. Whatever the solution of energy in the UFO phenomenon, it's not natural gas and it's not oil. It might be zero-point energy. It might even be something as relatively mundane as clean nuclear fusion or cold fusion. Whatever it is, it's going to transform the petrodollar system. And it is, as such, revolutionary in its political and financial ramification, starting with that, and it'll go into the culture and go into everything else, and it'll undercut the reasons for these wars that are being fought right now in the Middle East and in Ukraine and elsewhere.
Yeah, and it's because it's something simple. That's the problem. It's something really fundamental and very basic and very simple. Whatever this energy is, it is something that they can't profit on because us, the not the black community, but the us, the civilization out here it's something simple. It's like air. It runs on air.
Right.
It's something like that. It runs on dirt. It runs.
I've gone back and forth on what I think it is. For a while, my favorite candidate was 0 Point Energy. I happen to know Hal Puthoff, who is after he left the remote viewing program with CIA and Stanford Research Institute, has become one of the world's leading experts in 0 Point Energy. And it's interesting for me that I've chatted with him over the years. And I just saw, a guy with his intelligence community background, his scientific credentials, he pushes for 0 Point. I think that could be an answer. And for anyone who doesn't know what 0 Point energy is, it's a very simple idea. If you go down to the tiniest little fabric of reality, down to the level of an atom, and then down below that, and then down to the electron, and even more than that, there's a tremendous amount of activity happening there, and things pop into existence, seemingly, matter and antimatter, and they slam into each other, and they annihilate each other, and at that infinitesimally small part of space, there's an exchange of energy. There's a release of energy. And it's called 0 Point energy because it happens independent of thermal activity. It's not heat related. So it happens at 0 degrees Kelvin, where it's absolute zero. So it's some independent source of energy. So that's been proven to exist. It does exist. The question has always been, is it possible, practically speaking, to tap that energy, like a 0 Point energy device? And this is the kind of thing that Hal Puthoff's looked into, and other people too. Officially speaking, we don't have a solution to that. That's officially speaking. Now, there are other sources of energy as well, and I'm still a proponent of nuclear fusion, not fission, not like Fukushima,
right?
But fusion, where instead of splitting hydrogen, where you get a lot of energy, you're fusing hydrogen, and the byproduct is helium, which is inert and it's safe, and you're getting a vastly greater amount of energy. And that is something that, for years, scientists have said, it's just around the corner, it's just around the corner. But I really think it is just around the corner. And we could have fusion officially within, I don't know, decade, 20 years. If we do, when we do, that's revolutionary.
Well, and also there's another thing that really confuses me is hydrogen fuel cells. And what confuses me about it is the technology is there. We know it works. We use it. I was in a fuel cell program for GM about 10 years ago, and I got to drive one of those vehicles. And it is so simple, in goes hydrogen, out comes water. That's your exhaust, steam, basically. And that goes back into the atmosphere. And that is a perpetual thing. You're putting, you're taking the hydrogen, splitting it, running that across some plates that create electricity. That's it. That's all that's going on. No fuels, no fossil fuel. Nothing is being burned. Nothing is getting pulled out of we have all of the hydrogen we need in the world's oceans, and then we're replenishing it anyway because we're just separating it, and then it can combine itself back into nature. Why isn't every home in the world powered by a hydrogen fuel cell?
I guess maybe that is the answer, Jimmy. I guess the question that I would have is, what is the energy that it takes to charge the fuel cell? How is it being done? If there's a truly energy efficient way of charging the fuel cell, then yes, of course.
Well,
that's really the key.
Yeah, and I think the reason why it's not there is because there's not enough profit in the distribution systems and so forth, because it's just basically, you can extract everything you need out of seawater anyway, and pull the hydrogen out of that, but there's no profit in it, so they don't care. And the electricity itself is free at that point. And how much are you going to charge for hydrogen if it's basically free? It comes from the earth.
Yeah, I think I'd like to look into this more. I think that seems reasonable to me. I mean, and I've heard this, and I just haven't really explored it. But the idea of extracting the hydrogen, out of seawater, and working it that way.
Yeah,
that could be. I mean, there's probably. Here's the thing. About a year or two ago, I was fortunate. I attended a free, I guess we can call it. It was a breakthrough energy conference. That's it. I think I was like the one UFO researcher there. Most of these people were just really smart energy people looking into what we would call free energy solutions or energy harvesting devices, as they would call it. And what I learned is that there's a tremendous variety of these types of ideas. And I'm no expert. I couldn't tell you if they're all legitimate, but I don't think they're all bogus. I think that there are a number of types of solutions to energy that are right at our doorstep. They're there. They work. And the fuel cell certainly could be one, but there are definitely others. I think what's going to happen is this has been a pet theory I've worked for years, which is a combination of free energy devices with next generation 3D printing, and the next generation of the Pirate Bay. I could just see some smart person in some part of the world uploading an idea of an energy device that allow you to go off the grid. You could say, screw you, utility company, and you print it with your next generation 3D printer that can do integrated circuits and who knows what else.
Wow, that's scary. Talk about something that would get shut down.
Well, another reason why I think you have this movement toward a global totalitarian system right now. I think that, let's call them the powers that be, they don't want this. They don't want people having free energy. They don't want people having the independence that such a device would offer. And so they're trying to nail down an international system right now to prevent any kind of illegal file sharing, as they would call it. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. And also the threat now that they're using for any patent that deals with free energy, certainly when we say free energy or perpetual motion, all of that stuff it gets shot down or it gets snapped up as a threat. They call it a threat. It's a threat. It's a threat. Right. So they take the patent from you. And it's an amazing thing, and it's going on right in front of us. It's almost as if all of your free energy friends that you were talking to at that conference, they can't really talk about it, and they can't really go They can't. There isn't anybody, unless it can be profited on, there isn't anybody that's going to donate money or invest or any energy producer out there, Edison or anybody else that's out there that is providing energy at a profit. They're not going to encourage any of this research. And any patent that you apply for is going to get taken from you. They call it a threat, and that's the end of the story.
That's right. I wonder if people really appreciate, or if many people appreciate, just how much this world, well, the United States and other nations, whether that's European nations or Asian nations or anyone else, have moved toward a true totalitarian kind of a system. We're actually really, really close to it. And the thing is, years ago, I coined the phrase invisible fascism. I really think that's about as appropriate as any that I've heard. I mean, ask yourself, could one live in a fascist society without realizing it, without knowing it? And the answer is yes, of course.
Absolutely.
Of course you could.
Sure.
Kids can, a child could, and a lot of adults are basically big kids in big boy and big girl bodies. I don't think they have any idea of the kind of world that they live in. In the olden days, under the Hitler and Mussolini regimes or under Stalin's communism, you knew you were in that type of society. They had it in your face. The brown shirts would march down the streets and see Kyle, and you knew what you had. Today, those people at the top of the power pyramid realize that people don't want to think that they live in a fascist world. They want to think that they live in a free world. So they want, so you throw your Monday Night Football at them, you throw your Dancing with the Stars at them, and they're like, oh yeah, it's great, everything's fine. And you call it freedom. That's literally that's all that they do. And meanwhile, you restrict more and more of people's rights. And this ties in. Okay, so we're talking about free energy. They have to do that because they don't want free energy breakthroughs. And the UFO phenomenon is another spur toward a kind of global totalitarian system. In other words, the arrival of these others, as I often call them, onto planet Earth, whoever they are, whatever they are, they didn't just come willy-nilly. They basically landed into the lap of the expanding national security state that evolved out of the Second World War. These are the guys who realized, holy smokes, there's these other beings here. And they used the advent of that presence that they detected as a way to further create this kind of secret, opaque state, this hierarchical system as well. And slowly but surely eviscerate people's rights, which they've been doing ever since. And now we're in the post 9/11 world where it's just, they're galloping like a racehorse to take every last bit of your rights away from you. And they're doing it. They're doing it.
What do you do when a skeptic and debunker comes at you with, well, if this other technology is here, then how come we haven't seen evidence of it used in Iraq or Afghanistan or...
Several reasons. First of all, the reason for those wars, the war in Iraq is not being fought for any of the stated reasons, like, bringing democracy, which is a joke. The war in Iraq is being fought so that groups can get rich and wealthy and that they can plunder. And the war in Iraq is also being fought so that Iraq can be turned into Yugoslavia, broken into several different states with compliant U.S.-dominated regimes in there.
Right.
And you don't really necessarily have to have your George Jetson ray guns and your space-based weaponry. I mean, you can easily accomplish this by having the CIA fund groups like ISIS and destabilize regimes in Syria and Iraq. And, there's other ways of doing it. But the fact is this, if you've got breakaway technology, anti-grav and the like, and weapons that are off the charts, those weapons platforms all have classifications. You don't just use them for mere geopolitics. If there's the presence of others here on planet Earth, that presence is highly, highly classified. And that therefore the weapons platforms that are developed to deal with that presence must similarly be highly classified. One example that I've often used is a simple one. It's prosaic, but it's a good one. Back in 1986, when the United States bombed Libya, back then, some people may remember this. There's a whole false flag element to that whole event, by the way, which I'll forego at the moment. But suffice to say that the reasons that the United States bombed Libya, which is supposedly that they discovered the Libyans were sending out terrorist signals to their embassies and that the Libyans bombed a Berlin discotheque, none of that happened. That was all false flag. But the fact is, the U.S. bombed Libya. Now, what were the aircraft that the United States used? They didn't use their most advanced fighter aircraft in this at all, which was the stealth fighter, the F-117A,
right,
because its existence was classified. They did use F-111s, which were excellent fighter aircraft, but they didn't use their top fighter. They didn't use the one that had total radar invisibility. Why? Because the stealth fighter was considered too important for the Libyan mission, and they didn't want its existence to be compromised or to be revealed at that time. And so you have examples in the military of the most highly classified technologies often being held back from use for a particular mission. Mm-hmm. My argument is that if you've got highly advanced, like let's say flying saucer technology, let's just say, you're not going to use it for something as mundane as Afghanistan or Iraq. Why the hell would you need to?
Well, what would
First of all, because they want to bleed those countries dry anyway,
sure,
and they don't want to end the war quickly.
But would you use it?
Classified.
Well, exactly. Would you use it as chips, poker chips? You know, in other words, you have, flying saucer technology. We're not the only country that has had crashed craft. You know, they crash anywhere in the world. So Russia is probably in possession of some technology. So is India. So is China. Maybe even Brazil. But are at the highest levels? Are they aware? Are we aware of other technology out there, and do we make them aware of what we have? You know, not necessarily that we will use it, but there's really only, I think, 2 nations on planet Earth that have any ability whatsoever to resist U.S. power, and that's Russia and China.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. Like Brazil, I think, doesn't. Brazil is kind of sort of an economic ally of Russia and China, but they're also fundamentally a strategic ally of the United States.
That's right.
And there's really no other nation, not one. Iran, North Korea, I suppose, Syria, pretty tiny. I mean, there's really not many other nations. The United States and its allies control 85% of all global military spending. So that's really the big block there. And so within that, the U.S. totally dominates. So if something goes down in Britain, if something goes down in Australia, clearly America's going to be on top of that.
Right.
If something goes down in South America, ditto. That's America's backyard. They'll take over. Really, we're talking most of the world. Africa, same thing. I think the U.S. will find a way. U.S. right now has one of their military commands is called AFRICOM, and they're based out of there. They've got that region covered. They've got the world. So what happens is, if a UFO goes down in Brazil, I mean, there's the famous Varginha event of 1996 in Brazil, and it certainly appears that the U.S. got their people in there. They took over. They worked with the Brazilians. There's usually, I assume that there's some kind of quid pro quo going on so that the U.S. gives Brazil a little something, but the U.S. takes control. There was a UFO crash in 1978 in Bolivia. Same thing. Americans come in, they take over. This is the pattern. So in terms of poker chips, though, there's Russia and there's China. There's really Russia particularly. And I think that's a really good question because Russia's definitely had a long history of UFO encounters and their own versions of Roswell, apparently. Mm-hmm. So that's a question I don't have the answer to, Jimmy, but I do think that there's got to be a behind-the-scenes kind of intrigue in that, and I would love to know more about it. China, the strong impression I had is that under Mao in particular, China was really lagging in terms of their ability to deal with this. And, think of them militarily. China only recently has had a sophisticated military. You've got to be able to have some sophisticated weaponry and capabilities, I think, to have an ability to go around the world and pick these things up when they come down, unless they just happen to come in your country. But
yeah, and I look back to the famous Reagan-Gorbachev meeting in Iceland when he told Gorbachev, check this out, you're going to sign this treaty because we've got Star Wars. You've got the what? We've got Star Wars, man. We've got lasers, man. We've got satellites up there. We'll just shoot your missiles down the second you start to fire them up, and they won't even leave Russia. They won't even leave the ground. What? What is these Star Wars, right? Well, I'm wondering if that goes on with black projects and UFO tech. We've got this now. We've taken element 115 this far. We're able to do this, and they come back with, yeah, but we can do this. We have teleportation now. Whatever. I mean, it's. Right. I'm wondering if those poker chips are dealt with at another level, so we don't ever see the technology. It's used as a bargaining chip for world dominance. Well, stealth
famously served that purpose in the 1980s.
Sure did.
You're talking about Star Wars, but really it was stealth technology that in the opinion of many military analysts, helped to kind of crush or crash the Soviet Union, because the Soviets realized in the mid or late 80s that they had no defense, at least at that time, against it.
And you know what's funny about that whole story? It was a Russian scientist that came up with the calculations for the triangulation of the surfaces for the 117. And they had it there, and they just didn't think it was real. But they had it. Stealth technology was over in the USSR way before it got here. They had it. It was in their science. It was developed there.
Now, Jimmy, you just pulled that. That's a fact that I'm not sure I knew. I studied stealth, and I guess that fact slipped by me.
Yes. That's why you come to Fade to Black. That's why you come to Fade to Black. Hey, well, you know why? You know why you didn't know that? You grew your hair long. See, if you kept it short, if you kept the hair short. I wanted to ask you about that. When not the hair.
Thank you.
is your image. Now, I've done shows with you. We've done things publicly and so forth, and I see how the audience, when you speak, you can hear a pin drop. Everybody's listening to your every verb, every punctuate, everything that comes out of your mouth. And that's a lot of pressure, man. And you are our intelligent spokesman. Now you've got long hair. You don't really have that image anymore. But you're our intelligent front guy.
Oh, Albert Einstein looked like a dummy just because he had long hair?
Is that what you're going for? Okay.
No,
all right.
actually.
but you've become that guy, man. And it's
a strange journey.
It is. And if you look back, and I know you're going to agree with me, Stan Friedman, intelligent guy, smart, physicist, nuclear guy, blah, blah, blah. And when he spoke, people listened. He wasn't some far out guy. And now you are our generation's, Stanton Friedman, the guy that we look to for all of that. You represent us. Is that a lot of pressure?
It's interesting because I've been in this field publicly now for about 15 years. My first book came out in 2000. And I've always felt that I had respect from other people and other researchers, but I have noticed a distinct change, honestly, since 2009, 2010. And I do notice that people look at me in a certain way. That's true, whether deservedly or not. And I'm not really going to comment one way or the other on that, but I do notice it and I do feel it. And the only thing I can say is it's important to me to respect that, and it's important for me to do the very, very best I can do in understanding this phenomenon and communicating what I think about it in as responsible a way as I can. There is pressure, I won't lie about that. But the thing is, it's rewarding in the sense that, as long as I don't betray that trust, I'll just continue to do my best. I have a knack for being able, at the end of the day, to be able to relax a little bit and just to put things out of my head. I have to. I've had to learn to do that. But I take this very seriously. And I don't foresee a time when I will ever not take that seriously. And if there are people who see me in any kind of way that's like a role model or a leader, it's important for me to respect that and to do my very best to, within the bounds of reason, to fulfill what I'm able to fulfill without going crazy in the process.
Before I met you, before we became friends, I had said many times publicly that your 10-minute diatribe at the Citizens hearing, that video clip, is, it's one of the most intelligent, well-spoken, well-thought, presentations ever in the history of ufology. And that's going back to all of the, statements that have been made over the years. That 10 minutes, minutes is remarkable. But now, because of that, do you now choose your words a little more carefully? Do you force yourself into thinking before you speak now?
Oh, I've been doing that for years. I've had to. Once YouTube started to become a big thing, and once I realized that at any moment that I'm in public, at any time, someone could be recording me.
Right.
I've been very aware of that, and that's actually at times caused me to have confrontations that I would much have preferred to weasel out of. But if I'm on a stage, if I'm on a panel, and I'm asked a question that I have to deal with, I simply can't walk away from it. I don't want to be someone, because then that would be on YouTube forever. I'm always having to be aware that at any given moment when I'm speaking, that moment can last forever. Like it literally can. And we all saw, the horrible flame out of the comedian Michael Richards.
Oh, yeah.
How he was doing stand-up and he was being heckled, and he, like as a lot of comedians do, he turned back on the hecklers, but in his case it didn't go well, and he just dug a deeper and deeper hole for himself, and his career basically ended at that moment. And so as a public figure, which I suppose I am in this field.
It's okay to say that.
I have to be very aware. Yes, and I have my times when I'm out, and even at a conference, if it's after and we're having dinner later, and I can relax a little bit. But when I'm in a public setting, I'm always mindful of where I'm at.
Have you ever said anything that you regretted and you wanted to take back? And
yes, absolutely.
If so, what was it?
Yes, absolutely. I've said things that I've regretted, for sure. I can be kind of impetuous, I could say things. I can be a little hot-headed at times.
What happened?
No, I'm not going to repeat that here on your show. But what I will say, at the very last event, I was in Montreal last weekend. I was with some very wonderful people, by the way. And at the event, I was asked, what was it I was asked about now? Was it about Mars? No, it was about, I've gotten into trouble about Mars because I've talked about the Mars jump room thing, which I don't believe. And I had a one-day flame war on Facebook with Andy Basciago as a result of that. Mm-hmm. I don't regret any of that. The only things that I regret are when, on occasion, if I were ever to say anything against someone on a personal basis. And I never want to do that. I don't want to get into a war personally with another individual. I try to keep things on the level of ideas. I don't mind saying that I disagree with someone. I have no problem with that. I don't even mind saying that I think something that's being said is untrue or is a falsehood. I don't like going so far to accuse someone of being a liar. But I don't ever want to get to a point where I'm publicly bashing a person. I've privately bashed people. There are people in this field who I think are a menace to my field of study. I think there are people who I think are an absolute train wreck. That's the truth. But I don't say that stuff publicly. I won't do it.
And so I guess, and I want to stay on this. I want to stay right on this target. Mm-hmm. What about image? And the reason why I ask is because you have an image. People look at you. They paint their own picture. You certainly look intelligent. You've got that going for you in spades. So, but are you conscious of your image? You're on TV a lot. You do a lot of documentaries.
I'm absolutely aware of that, for sure. Look, the image is like your armor when you go out into public. It really is. And I think anyone who's got a public image would agree with that. You go out there and it's you to the world. It's your public persona. And that's not opposite your private persona, but it is a definite public persona. You carry yourself in a certain way in public. I go out to a stage, I wear a suit. I always wear a suit. No matter how long my hair may get, I always go out there, I wear a suit because I believe in representing myself and I believe in representing my discipline in that manner. I think that's what I want to do. Even the fact that I have let my hair grow long, it's funny. I have a lot of Facebook people, and they love commenting on my hair, whether it's short, long, beard, no beard. I've gone back and I've gone over the years, with all of these looks, and they always get an enormous number of comments from people. But I choose every bit of my appearance, at least with some mind of as a public persona. I don't really have I don't have a fully private life anymore. Everything that I do has a public ramification as I see it. And I'm fine with that. But if I decide to let my hair grow long, it's because, I'm at a point in my life where I I want to convey to myself, and I want to feel that I'm a little bit less constrained. Maybe I'm a little bit more creative, perhaps, and I don't mind showing that to the world. That's how I'm at this point in my life. Maybe if the hair starts falling out, I'll trim it. I'll do something else with it. Who knows?
Well, just don't do the ponytail and get a Corvette, because that's the demise. That's the apocalypse. You know,
no ponytail or yes ponytail.
No ponytail. No
ponytail.
No ponytail. No Corvette. Real quick before we go to the break, let's touch on the first thing. When we come back, we're going to talk about Hangar 1. This Friday, you're going to be out at the Ozark Mountain UFO Conference. What are you going to be talking about out there?
Well, I'm going to expand on what I've been developing for the past few months, which is a geopolitical analysis of the UFO phenomenon and cover-up. In other words, really looking at this not simply as the national security state, but the international security state, and essentially looking at the current undeclared war between the United States and Russia, secondarily with China, and trying to understand how this actually affects the UFO scene. In my opinion, it does. I think there is a relationship, and I've been exploring that in my lectures over the past few months.
Do you feel that tension that the rest of us are feeling now, what is going down with China, Russia, and the United States? Or is it more of the same? Is it status quo, what's been going on since, the end of World War II?
Well, what's been going on since the end of World War II is that the U.S. has been in a kind of war with Russia, but it's actually ramped up since the end of the Cold War, crazy as that sounds. So, I often liken it to the movie Highlander, which had the catchphrase, "There can only be one."
Right.
And that's really where we're at. We're at the point now where in the history of human civilization, we're at a unique point where only a very few people have the ability to own pretty much everything worth owning on this planet, whether it's the water, whether it's genetically modified foods, whether it's minerals in the ground. And so what they're doing is eliminating all rivals, and that's what we're seeing. And Russia is a major rival, or the Russian financial power is a rival, I guess I should say. And ditto with the Chinese. So with the U.S.-led, IMF-led, it's basically U.S., Europe, IMF, in other words, the political, military, financial structure that is led by the Americans is in a position where they're trying to destroy the last competitors of that power so they can own everything.
Before we head to the break, staying on the same subject, do you think that there's a reason why we haven't used nuclear weapons, since Japan? We haven't used them. And do you think they will ever be used? That there is a power that...
Well, I think...
Yeah, or have we been interrupted?
I think it's, first of all, since 2003, I believe, it has been U.S. policy to have a first strike nuclear capability. So I think people need to understand that the United States' official policy on nukes is that they do not abstain from first use on nukes. And in fact, when you're looking at Iran, the joke of the situation, everyone's worried about Iran's developing nukes. In fact, the United States has a strategic plan to bomb something like 400 plus Iranian sites, many of which would be used with tactical nukes, that is nuclear weapons. So the United States has these plans on the map, and I think their military is not averse to using it. Whether they will is another question. There's a number of cases in which UFOs have been seen and observed interfering with nuclear weapons, a number of famous cases. What's less well known is that there's a couple of other cases where the UFOs appear to have turned on nuclear capabilities and sent missiles into launch mode before they were disabled. There's a very well-known Russian case, Soviet case, that became one of the so-called KGB files. After the Soviet Union broke apart, a number of these files made it out, and these aren't spurious. These are serious records that journalists have been able to study. So I don't know what the relationship is. Where they, are there different factions? Are there the peaceniks and then the guys out for having practical jokes?
Right.
I don't know. But certainly in terms of nukes, I think people need to understand that the United States policy since Bush, and it has not been revoked under Obama, is they have not abstain from a first strike policy.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence, though, that since 1947, since Roswell, We've stayed nuclear free of exchanges. I just feel like
dropping them on people.
Yes, right. Let's take a quick break, Richard. When we come back, let's talk a little Hanger One. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network. KGR, the planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Richard Dolan when we come back. Stay with us.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Are you a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, or UFO skywatcher? If so, FNGinnovations.com has the product you definitely need in your investigations kit or go bag. Introducing the Morpholite Wide Beam Tactical Flashlights that put the light where you need it most. Traditional flashlights shine a focused round beam with limited line of sight in the dark. Morpholite Tactical Flashlights change all that, utilizing a revolutionary wide beam design to enable you to see safety hazards such as hanging wires and steel, pipes, and holes in the floor you just can't see with a focused round beam. In the field, where safety is paramount, a 180-degree beam increases orientation and peripheral vision in the dark. Morpholite flashlights are ideal for investigations in abandoned facilities such as houses and hospitals, factories, caves, and tunnels. Avoid those low-hanging tree branches that poke your eyes in the woods. Visit FNGinnovations.com to see a full line of tactical lights and accessories. That's FNGinnovations.com.
Now you can find all your favorite talk radio shows live, all in one place at TalkStreamLive.com. Listen from anywhere, office, home, or in your car. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com and click on one of the many live talk show hosts you want to listen to. It's free and easy. No computer? Download the smartphone apps. Never miss your favorite talk show. Find them all at TalkStreamLive.com.
Hi, Ray Hobbs here with KGRA. Spring is just around the corner here in Northwest Arkansas, and that means it's almost time for the 28th Annual Ozark Mountain UFO Conference, continuing a time-honored tradition of bringing thought-provoking information about other worlds around us. Join me and the KGRA crew April 10th through the 12th in beautiful Eureka Springs, Arkansas, for another great lineup of speakers, including investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe, the National UFO Reporting Center's Peter Davenport, returning to Ozark as this year's keynote speaker, author and American historian Richard Dolan, and many more. The KGRA will be there broadcasting live all weekend. Register and reserve your seating early and pick up a free membership from the KGRA and Ozark Mountain Publishing. Visit www.ozarkufoconference.com for tickets and information. That's ozarkufoconference.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, the planet. Tonight, Richard Dolan. Tomorrow night is Fader Night. All you Fadernauts, open lines all evening long. Hey, Richard.
Yes, sir.
What do you think of those Fadernauts, huh? Crazy bunch of kids, huh?
I love them. I think it's great. I think they're motivated, enthusiastic, and worthy of the name.
We got to come up with what would it be? Dolanites?
No. We have Dolanites.
Yeah, Dolanite. Oh, really? I didn't make that up.
That was originated by our good friend producer Ray Hobbs. Ray, I think he originated that, and I don't come up with this stuff. I mean,
I didn't either.
Race came up with Dolanites. I think Fadernauts is good. I like that.
You need to become a Fadernaut. You should go over to one day when you have some time in your busy life. Go over to faders.org and just register. That would be really cool.
All right, dude. I'm going to follow you on Twitter. Becoming a Fadernaut, that might be a little much.
Hey, talk to Chase. It changed her life. It can change yours. Okay, hey, listen. I've been ignoring the Fadernauts all night. I've got a bunch of questions, and then I'd like to talk about Hanger One. We'll talk about contact in the desert, and in the meantime, let me get some of these questions out from the Fadernauts. Which tactics would serve mass citizen protests for disclosure? Gene Sharp's nonviolent approach, or Saul Alinsky's style as the Occupy movement? Cheers. That's from Jason.
Well, I think that, honestly, I believe in peaceful solutions, but I don't necessarily believe in solutions that are technically legal. And, maybe it's not right for me to advocate breaking the law, but the fact is, you look at organizations like WikiLeaks, you look at people like Edward Snowden, and we've gone into a point in this world where the information that governments have on us is vastly greater than any information we have from our government. And, back in the 1970s, it was believed by some researchers that the newly established Freedom of Information Act would be the tool that would allow researchers to shake the tree and have some documents fall out that would prove the reality of the UFO phenomenon. It didn't happen because what we discovered is that the Freedom of Information Act was, restricted in many ways. So what we now have is WikiLeaks. We have the ability now, only in the last decade, for people to go in digitally and essentially rip information out legally or illegally and put it out to the world. I think that's the solution, to be honest with you. And that's I don't want to advocate people breaking the law and stealing digital data, but frankly, I think that's probably one of the main things that'll do it. There might be a few other things that happen, but I think leaks is probably the most important one. Whistleblowers. Yeah. I used to think that a mass sighting would do it, but I don't know. There have been mass sightings, and some of them have been put up on YouTube even, and they don't seem to get the attention. So,
yeah, I remember asking you once. I don't know if this was private or public, but I did ask you if it does happen one day, how is it going to happen? And I think you said pretty directly, you think it's just going to come from a bombshell from WikiLeaks, something that they just can't control.
I've always been kind of leaning toward that, but it's hard to know. I mean, it's the future. The one thing that I say is, we're moving. We're in such a radical time that everything is changing so much. The thing, this is I guess one of the paradoxes of my quirky brain, but I feel like we're moving in a path that we don't really have a lot of control over. It's like being on a river that's just taking you to a destination, and we like to think that we're navigating, but basically the river's just taking us. In other words, I think that something like openness and the end of secrecy on UFOs is some kind of inevitability. Doesn't mean we don't have to do anything to make it happen, but our world is changing so much that I think it's inevitably creating forces that are going to continue to make this change happen. New technologies that come on. I mean, 10 years ago we didn't have Skype. 10 years ago we just barely had Facebook and MySpace and things like that, social networking. We didn't even have Twitter. We're just getting smartphones. The world that we live in, that we take for granted, is basically 10 years old.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
and that's allowed us to transform our own consciousness and our awareness of things in so many ways. So where are we going to be in another 10 years, another 20 years? We really, I think, literally can't imagine it. But I think that we'll have new tools at our disposal. I don't know what they are.
Well, according to NASA chief scientist Dr. Ellen Stoffen, she said yesterday on that panel, I'm going to quote her here. She said, "I'm going to say, I think we are going to have strong indications of life beyond Earth within a decade. And I think we are going to have definitive evidence within 20 to 30 years. That's a pretty bold public statement. And that's one that you can read between the lines, in about 100 different ways.
Yeah. I read that, saw the headline. I didn't read the article today, but I did see that. But the thing is, with the NASA individuals or the SETI individuals, I mean, they're talking still in a very safe kind of setting, which is, we'll discover evidence for life, millions of light years away or thousands of light years away. You very seldom hear these people looking at the actual evidence for other civilizations being here. They don't get into that. So I think it's just, I think we very well may find evidence that there's life on other planets in the future, but that really doesn't get to the heart of the matter, which is there's something going on here on planet Earth.
Yeah, could you imagine? Just think about this for a second. With what Kepler has done, and the 1,000 exoplanets that have been discovered outside of our own solar system. But just imagine the next solar system over, we find not an Earth, but another Mars. In other words, evidence of ice, evidence of an atmosphere, close Goldilocks, proximity to a sun or maybe a binary system. And if it was right there, we would throw every resource that we had at that. We would want to go and discover. And here we have Mars right here, and we're not. I just don't get it. I do not understand. I'm confused. I'm almost pissed off about it, actually. This comes in from Nicholas. Jimmy, what does Richard think about John E. Brandenburg's assertion about the ancient Mars nuclear conflict?
I haven't read, if he has a book on this, I haven't read that book. My general feeling is simply that it all comes down to how does one make the argument that one makes. It's a very tenuous claim. There's been nukes on Mars. How does one know? What's the basis of the argument? There's been the basis for an argument that there was an ancient nuclear exchange in, supposedly in the Vedic texts. I did a study of that and was not persuaded that translation was anywhere nearly accurate or legitimate. Nuclear exchange on Mars, I don't know where the information comes from.
What about, we talked about this earlier. I've got some other questions here we're going to get to in just a second. And you know what? Let's open up the phone lines before we start to run out of time.
Let me just add, I just want to jump in here. And I just say that when we make a statement on anything, all right, it's always important to understand, to ask the question, how does the individual get the information that they claim to have? It's fundamental. And I often don't sense that enough among people who are interested in this field. There's this willingness to just accept anything out there because they think it sounds good or it feels right to them for some reason, and that's just not good enough. You have to understand, where does the information come from? What is the source? What is the quality of that information?
And you know what? I want to ask you about that for a second. You had said once, and I want you to expand on it. You had said once that you finally had figured out a way to go back and check out the progenitor and the original sources of postings on the internet and the original dating system.
That's right.
And I remember when you were telling me you were like a kid. You finally discovered
I get excited.
Yeah, you did. You totally got. Please share that with us.
Tool. Yeah. If you go to the Google search bar, just the basic Google search thing, and you search out a phrase. I wrote about this in my, I think I wrote about this in UFOs for the 21st Century Mind. I did an example of the history of Project Bluebeam, which is something that people talk about. It's the alleged fake holographic display of a fake alien invasion that'll scare people into accepting a global fascism.
Right.
Fake alien invasion scenario. So I wanted to ask myself, well, when did Bluebeam first appear? So what you do is you take a phrase, and in this case I use Bluebeam, you put it in quotes, and then you, in the advanced search tools of Google, you do search by date. And this is an entirely possible thing to do. And now what it won't do is you have to give it certain parameters, but you just, what I do is I'll go like year by year back in time to the first instance in which a phrase appears. And you're able to do this by the search date feature. It's absolutely possible to do. You have to be a little careful because some websites will seem like they're from 2003, but they've been updated a number of times, and so it's not always 100%, but it often is quite accurate. And you can, I would say 90+% of the time, get to the original source the first time something appears. And that's important. It's important to know, on the web when something first appears, because you can then have a much better sense of the legitimacy of that source of information. And the other, I use that in tandem with the Google reverse image search. And this is very important. So in other words, someone shows you a JPEG of a giant skull or a cyclops skull. This actually happened to me once. You're able to search the image and find out all the other places on the web where that image exists. It's a feature. So people need to look into this. It's reverse image and search by date, and you can combine them. One guy wrote in my Facebook message, I was like one of 90 people on this, and he said, this is evidence, and he puts this picture of giant cyclop human beings like thousands of years ago. And I'm looking at this picture, and my instinct is like, yeah, not really. But I took 5 minutes out of my life, and I did a reverse image search of that image, and I discovered that indeed that had been created in an Adobe Photoshop competition from like 2003 or 2004. And I found where that picture was created. And I come back to this guy on this thread, and I said, hey, I just want you to understand that image is not of an actual giant. It was created in a Photoshop competition from 2004. And what his answer was actually disappointing. He said, well, Mr. Dolan, I'll accept your word for it because you're a famous researcher. And I shot back. I said, hey, don't accept my word for it because you think I'm a famous researcher. You could have done the exact same thing that I just did. All right? And frankly, I don't want to be doing your homework for you all the time. You should know how to do this. Know how to source out your stuff before you start putting it out there. And it's very basic investigative tools that are available to everyone before we copy and paste that next Facebook rumor and scare the bejesus out of people. Remember in 2011 when Richard Hoagland was telling the world that Comet Elenin was a spaceship coming to Earth. I remember that year. I got actually quite a few people writing to me afraid. And I remember kept saying to them, no, it's not a spaceship. It's not a spaceship. But what if it's a spaceship? No, it's not a spaceship. There's a lot of this very loose-headed, and a lack of propensity to check facts. And we're just tools. We're just going to be used over and over again like pawns in a game if we don't get our act together and start learning how to investigate and check facts, at least on a basic level.
While you were... I was just doing Project Bluebeam and modifying searching by date and then searching by image in reverse. Dude, right. That's scary.
It's a powerful... Yeah, Bluebeam actually was... I forgot to mention the source of it was a Southwest American journal from like the early 90s. And they wrote about it in an explicitly evangelical Christian way, so like the second coming of Jesus. And they did reference, though, this French-Canadian from Quebec, a gentleman named Serge Monast, who he's no longer alive. But he was the guy who first worked the Bluebeam theme, and he was kind of an evangelical. And for him, it was a second coming of Jesus.
You've just...
it wasn't an alien invasion. After that didn't happen, that morphed into the alien invasion.
This comes from Jeffrey K. Jeffrey Kropp. He says, do you think perhaps the aliens do not want disclosure because it would destroy their agenda working with other governments?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if I were an alien, I wouldn't want this disclosure to happen at all. I certainly would not. I think it would be... It's not that they couldn't take us in a street fight, but why have to deal with the crowd, with the pitchforks and torches crowd coming at you? I mean, there would certainly be some of that. I think whatever they have been doing, I think they've been here for a very, very long time doing it with a great deal of security. The problem that they have is that we had the 20th century, and now we have the 21st century. So in other words, in ancient times, presumably they could do what they wanted, have underground bases, do whatever, and in total security. Not so much now. We've developed a technological infrastructure that is a little bit more capable at detecting them. And so we're in a position now of the advanced guard of our civilization, that is the advanced black budget world, is basically aware of them. The rest of us are not officially aware, but we're becoming aware. That's really, we're at this interim stage. That's exactly where we're at. So these other beings, all I can do is assume, but I would assume that they are thinking about, what will they do, or what will things be like when, not if, when the rest of humanity is aware to their presence, like in an open way. But I have to think there's a hassle factor involved that they may not want to deal with. The other aspect, though, is I just personally doubt that we will have the ability really to relate to them. I just don't think I think that they operate in a way that is, we call it alien for a reason. I think their way of thinking is not our way of thinking. I don't really think that we're going to have an easy way of understanding. These people who talk about the space brothers here to help us, I tend to think that that's mostly delusional. I'm not saying all the aliens here want to eat us or want to be our enemy, but
okay, hold that answer, because that has to do with this next question that Renee, one of our producers here, just sent me. So I need to cut you off, and you're going to understand why. She says, I joined MUFON over 30 years ago. My experiences have been it's primarily a nuts and bolts type of research organization. I'd like to know if you personally have spoken in depth with any of the many people worldwide who claim to or appear to channel ETs. And whether or not you have, how much credence do you give to the idea that disclosure is happening already through increasing numbers of experiences through human ET telepathy? That's why I cut you off.
Yeah. Fascinating question, tricky question. I wrote about this at length in my last book, UFOs for the 21st Century Mind, as a matter of fact, and I would encourage her to read it. It's a well-written, engaging book that deals with this subject. The idea of consciousness, this is really key to where a lot of UFO research is going. It's important. It's important because, in my view, there is strong evidence that there's this intense telepathic element to contact between us and them. Every single abduction encounter that you can imagine, that you can research, every single encounter that we've ever heard about almost always includes a telepathic component. And I think that this is real. So there's a mind-to-mind thing happening. How is this happening? Well, why is it happening? There's something about us, there's something about them that allows for this. I personally believe, I studied remote viewing. I haven't done it, but I've studied it. I believe that every human being has remote viewing capability. We have psychic ability, in other words. Some people are really gifted, others maybe less gifted, but it's there. The idea about channeling, similarly, I've met a number of individuals who claim to be channelers who I've thought were not channelers, but I have never ruled out the possibility that there's something to it. I've never been convinced by any individual channeler, never. But I think in theory that it could be possible. I do believe there are a number of people who are not professional channelers, but who have had what they have told me are telepathic experiences. Some people refer to things like downloads and the like. Some of these people I think are absolutely sincere, and I think they could be legitimate. I think that there is an element to this mind-to-mind connection that we have to explore. We can't just toss it out. My training as a historian is not to want to go there. I want to deal with documents. I want to deal with things I can confirm. But the fact is, I think that there's this other aspect of it. And it's harder for us to grasp because the fact is we're dealing with a phenomenon that is really beyond probably our mind's ability fully to grasp. We struggle to understand it. So we do our best, and I think there'll always be a bit of mystery involved.
This comes from Jeff. He says, whatever happened to the ex-CIA agent that you talked to at the nursing home?
Oh, yeah. He's, this is a YouTube, this is the 1 million view YouTube video that I've done. I think it's by far more views than anything else that I've participated in. And actually, I've always been a bit, I've had this a scant attitude about it, because normally everything I put out there, I'm 100% certain in the quality of what I have to say. And this is an interview with a man whose statements I've never been able fully to confirm one way or the other. This is a man who, he's still alive. He was very ill when I interviewed him. This was 2 years ago I did the interview. In northern Minnesota, I'll say that. And he had claimed to have been recruited through CIA back in the late 50s to not only convey UFO reports from Europe, but then with his boss to go to Area 51 to investigate the ET situation there at the request of President Eisenhower. Very explosive stuff. I will say this. I felt that man was not lying to me. I still do not believe he was lying to me. I do have his military records. And, but I don't know how accurate his memory was. That's the truth. He was on medications. He was not feeling well physically. There was a couple of moments where I was really afraid. I'm not being facetious here. I was almost afraid he was going to die right in front of me. And he was a sweetheart of a man, and I loved him. I met his son-in-law who was there. His son-in-law spoke very, very in a lot of detail about his father-in-law, and he knew his father-in-law's story very much. And I think the son-in-law was a stand-up guy, a minister. Church-going people, very good people. That man is now in a nursing home. He's in full-time care. His health is not good. One of the gentlemen who helped arrange that interview, who really cultivated this man for years, a man named Ron Garner, did recently just die. I was very sad, and I spoke to Ron like a week before he died. And Ron had really worked that witness much more than I did to make it happen. But the witness himself, I don't think his health is very good.
Let's go to the phone lines. Dino, say hi to Richard Dolan.
Hi, Jimmy. Good night. Hi, Richard. The last time you were on, you just answered partly one of my questions I was going to ask tonight. We look to you, the fate or not, you're enjoying you, and we want to keep this flow going. Last time you were on, you spoke about some of what you spoke about tonight, about aliens that are here undercover, so to speak, but go out in public. You had mentioned that the first time you had seen one, there was a couple at a wedding, and you had psychically, they had communicated saying, "Oh, we're fitting in very well, but no one can hear us except this bud behind us here."
Not a wedding, but a church service. But yeah, you got the right idea.
Yeah, and that was fascinating to me. And I guess this goes toward the disclosure question that I want to ask you. With Snowden, I mean, if Snowden maybe knows something we don't know, if he brings it up, this ties in with the Jimmy Kimmel Show appearances of both President Clinton and President Obama, and then John Podesta's parting words. Are these the types of things that you think are being prompted by Richard Bassett's lobbying effort? Yes, Steve Bassett's lobbying efforts, which I support in D.C., that are going on concurrently at this time. What do you think about all that?
Thank you for the call, Dino.
Fantastic question. I'm really impressed by that. And in fact, I just spent the weekend with Steve Bassett in Montreal, and we had a conversation precisely about this alone a number of times. Are we still on the air, Jimmy?
Yes, we are.
Good. I heard a little click there.
I'm moving phone calls around. We've got a bunch backed up here.
A couple of things. First, I think that the pressure of the Rockefeller Initiative, which has been making waves again lately. This is a 20-year-old thing. Back in the early 1990s, Lawrence Rockefeller did try to work through the Clintons to get the UFO matter sort of brought to public attention. And during that period of time, Lawrence Rockefeller met several times with Hillary Clinton. This is why this is a big thing now, and it's known that Hillary and Lawrence Rockefeller talked about this. And so the question is, well, what the heck did they talk about? And the thing has been bubbling around for years, and Steve Bassett recently has been pushing this again. And so the question is this why the matters come up in the public domain? And I think it's entirely possible. Certainly what President Obama said with Jimmy Kimmel the other week had to be and was totally, completely scripted. There's no way that anything like that is off the cuff.
Right.
So then you have to ask yourself, so why were they doing this? Why were they bringing this up? And that's interesting because, when President Obama said, well, we're being totally controlled by the aliens, as a joke.
Right.
Ha, ha, ha. But when you look at the presidency, what you conclude is that the presidency is totally controlled. I mean, there's no question about this. The president is not a free actor. Who honestly believes that he is? He's certainly not.
No, those questions weren't answered off of the cuff. Those were presented in the White House months in advance, and the answers were scripted months in advance, and word for word, it was rehearsed, and he knew exactly what he was going to say.
Right. So the question is, why bring this up? And I think the only reason you bring it up is you disable it through humor. I'm not saying that he's admitting that aliens control the White House, but he's disabling the UFO matter. And he did it very effectively through humor. I mean, that's why he got elected president. He's good in front of the camera.
Let's go back to the phones. Hi, say hi to Richard Dolan. Who's calling?
Hi, Richard Dolan. This is Lisa from San Francisco.
Hi,
Lisa. I believe I remember which Lisa this is. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to hear you on the show again. Welcome back to the show, and it's been a fascinating couple hours.
Glad you're enjoying it.
And I did have a question. I was curious what you felt was the significance, if any, of the decision of the VA to award full medical benefits to John Burroughs regarding after the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Yeah, this is a fascinating case. John Burroughs, a gentleman that I know, and he was in the Rendlesham Forest in late 1980, had multiple encounters with, let's call it, landed craft, UFOs, where he was exposed to what he calls ionizing radiation. This seems to be related to significant health issues that he encountered in subsequent years. And in his attempts to get access to his medical records when he had dealt with these issues later, he found that those medical records were classified. And it was the specific period from 1979 to 1981 or 82, I think, the time that he was, which included the Rendlesham case, those medical records, everything was classified, and it's been a heck of a struggle for him to get them released. He has been able to get those released. He's still petitioning the British government, by the way, for relevant records relating to that encounter. I think what John Burroughs has done in his dogged way, very intelligent tactic he's been taking in this research too. But yeah, I think he has proven that there was a highly exotic, unusual component to whatever it was that he experienced in the Rendlesham Forest in December 1980. And I think he's in the process of really nailing the British government to the wall on this. They're still, they claimed years ago that they released all of their UFO documents, but they just lied. They flat out lied. And they have held back something like, I think, 70, 80 pages worth of, or actually even more than that.
Yeah, 18 files.
Yeah, right. Thank you. And they classified them not under UFOs, but as UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, which is the same thing. And they just simply lied. But they're dragging their feet, and they haven't released that information. But I think what John Burroughs has done is extremely important. And by the way, just another plug for the Ozark Conference, the word is that John Burroughs is said to be going to be there accompanying Linda Moulton Howe. And he may be up on stage unofficially.
Ooh, man.
Yeah, that's the word I've heard.
Well, looks like I'm going to cancel the premiere for Hangar 1. I'm going to Ozark. that's all.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting weekend. I really do.
Thank you for Lisa. Anything else?
Oh, no, that was it.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you really quick, and thanks for hanging for a few more minutes. I'm going to talk you into it. What's another 15 minutes between friends? And it's 5 o'clock in the morning in New York. But
I'm waking up early tomorrow to fly to Arkansas. I have to get up at 6 a.m., dude. So I'm just letting you know I'm taking a bullet here.
It's rock and roll. It ain't the Boy Scouts. is Mexico City, and the Roswell slides. And I
will be there.
I read your statement about it. Comprehensive, well written, but and I know you can't really take sides, and I'm not asking you to now. I would love for you to.
No, but I'll talk as openly about it as I can. I have no problem discussing this.
Okay, you were invited to go down and speak.
That's right.
Okay, let's start right there. You were invited. Were you reticent at first to go?
I was, yes, I absolutely was. The so-called Roswell slides, and I don't really think it's right to call them the Roswell slides, but they're fascinating. These are 2 Kodachrome slides that have apparently, I say apparently, been dated to 1947 that appear to show alien bodies. Now, these slides have not been revealed to the public. There's been a video screen capture of one that's gotten out there, and it's not clear. I've had long conversations with the researchers, Tony Bragalia and Don Schmidt, about these, and both of them have seen the slides, and both of them have been very involved in looking at it, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for both of these guys. And they are telling me, they're like, look, this... the people who are trying to debunk this stuff as like another alien autopsy video from the 90s and so on, these guys do not think that that's the case. I've read analyses now. Jaime Maussan in Mexico has gotten involved, and he's got the money behind this to sort of give it a venue. The problem that all of these researchers have is when you've got slides like this, where do you take them? What university will study them? The fact is no university wants these things. They're afraid of them. And it costs money. This is the perennial problem with any bit of UFO evidence that one encounters. So these researchers, and I have not been part of any of the research. I've followed from a distance like everyone else once I have been aware of this in the last year or so. But they have gathered together enough analysis of the slides themselves, and they know the backstory. They know about the family, the couple that had them, and the profession of the husband, who was I think he was a geologist in the New Mexico area. The wife was a very well-connected socialite who was, and they got around apparently. Now, why would they have pictures of dead aliens? I don't know the answer to this, but I do know that these slides have been and are continuing to be studied in a sophisticated way. So Jaime Maussan asked me, I was in Phoenix a couple of months ago, and he was there, and I was doing a live thing with him for his Mexican audience, and he asked me live on the air if I would go to give closing remarks at the Mexico City unveiling. This is at Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. And I didn't agree right away. I said I want to think about it. I spoke to Don Schmidt. I spoke to Tony Bragalia. I was aware of the absolutely, I have to say, vicious attacks against these slides by a number of researchers. I don't want to call them researchers, commentators. And I thought this is really becoming a polarized issue, but I decided I wanted to go. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell will be there. I want to have the opportunity to see him. But mostly I want to have the opportunity to be there when these things are unveiled, because I have a feeling it's going to be history in the making. And, my role is simply, if Jaime asked if I would provide my comments on the implications that these might have for disclosure of the UFO phenomenon if they turn out to be legit. And I said I would do that. So I think it's an interesting topic.
Well, the lesson learned with the alien autopsy film should be enough for all of us to back up. And you would think that with Don and Tom and Jaime and everybody that's of note that is involved with this, that this is a potential career-ending move if it goes on.
No, I don't agree. I mean, I think that the lesson to be learned from the alien autopsy video is that we have to be careful. It doesn't mean that we have to run away every time that something like this potentially comes down the road. I mean, I just don't think that I could do that in good conscience.
Right.
We can't be so fearful that we just don't look at these things. There's a lot of loud people trying to shoot it down right now.
Well, let me jump in. My point is that they wouldn't have gone this far unless this is completely vetted because of the experience of what the alien autopsy film did for all of ufology. Mm-hmm. That's my point. I mean, no, I think that this is thoroughly thought through.
My instinct on this, my guess at this point is that these slides are not going to be the home run that people are expecting, because there's going to be fundamental issues that will always exist about the provenance of these, and there will always be issues that there's just going to be questions that are going to probably exist about these. On the other hand, I don't think they're going to be a strikeout. In other words, I don't believe that they will be successfully debunked. That's my take on it now. I haven't seen them. So it's just my suspicion on them right now is that they're going to add to the mix, and they'll probably be another frustrating piece of quasi-evidence that people are going to be arguing about, just like a lot of other things relating to this subject, unfortunately. But I think there's certainly, for us to avoid this, I think is foolish. The slides exist, so it's up to us to study them and to put them out in a responsible way so that now in another month, the whole rest of the world will be able to look at these slides.
A couple of really quick questions. Oh, before I get to these, I wanted to ask you about Hangar 1. We could actually have blown through the whole show, and we didn't even bring it up. What sets Hangar 1 apart? You've done so many, you've done so much. You've done so much. Why your involvement? Now we're in the second season, and I'm excited to do this with you. It's an honor. But what do you think sets it apart from everything else for ufology?
I was asked to participate in both of these seasons, and I'll just say this: Paul Villadad, the producer of the show, told me during the first season that I mean maybe he was just being nice to me, but he told me that my research, my books, were some of the primary inspirations that he had for the show. And so that every author wants to hear that. You're like, oh, well, great. My work's important. So what I wanted out of that show, and I told him this, was that I don't want just another he said, she said UFO, show that just spins its damn wheels. Like, oh, yeah, there's lights in the sky. Oh, these skeptics say, oh, no, it's something else. Right. And then you're left with nothing. And I said the main thing I want is to get political. Get political, because this is a political subject. We're dealing with a cover-up. We're dealing with the subversion of the traditional Republican institutions of government that have really gone far, far away. We're dealing with what I argue is the corpse of a republic that has turned into an empire, and the UFO phenomenon has been instrumental in making that happen. And I said, if we get into those issues, I'll be happy. Every other documentary that I've dealt with on television has avoided that.
Did it just absolutely blow your mind when you sat and talked with Paul and Doug, but certainly Paul, when to have an executive producer, a suit in Hollywood, know as much about the subject as you do? Did you just flip out? Because I did.
He's very knowledgeable. I was really impressed. Normally when I deal with a TV producer, they're competent at what they do, but you can always tell that they're kind of new, like they've been assigned to do the documentary by a network, and they're doing their best to get up to speed, but they don't really know anything. Paul, absolutely, the producer of Hangar 1, he knows this field very, very well. I would say he's quite sophisticated at it. And so that's a nice thing. And I do feel that his intention is correct. There, look, you could nitpick over a lot of things about any of these TV shows. The fact is, they're made for TV, they're cable, and honestly, the very nature of doing a TV cable show is especially in 21st century America, you're going to have elements of it that you could do differently, and I don't want to say one way or the other, but I think fundamentally the content in Hangar 1, I think is good. I think it's presented overall in a reasonable way. And as far as my own participation, that's really all that I can speak of. I was very happy with it. I everything that I said was what I it was always my best effort on every one of the questions I was asked.
Well, it's done by ufologists, for ufologists. And that's what I can say about Hangar One. It comes from that mindset. Hey, I want to take one last quick call. This is Steve in Bluefield, good friend of the show. Steve, say hi to Richard Dolan.
Mr. Dolan, how are you this evening, sir?
Very well, sir. Nice to meet you.
What keeps you motivated? After all these years have passed, and, we keep fighting the good fight, what keeps you motivated, Mr. Dolan?
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Great question. I often say that I'm not a utopian, but I am an idealist, and I have certain things that I believe in. Crazy as it sounds, I believe in truth. I believe that I don't want to live in a country where my government is not responsive to me as a citizen. And my attitude is, as long as there is significant secrecy on something as important and game changing as UFOs, that we've got a problem. I feel that it is indeed, right for me to demand my government be responsive to me, and it is indeed right for you to demand your government to be responsive to you. And when it isn't, then we have a right to fight that. So for me, the UFO phenomenon is first and foremost, I look at it politically in that way. I don't like having a cover-up. I don't like having this discrepancy of having something that's officially true and then something that's actually true, which is, I think, where we've gone in this world. So that's the fundamental. And then the other aspect of it is I am engaged by the mystery of it. My mind simply is drawn to the curiosity of it. I want to learn as much of it as I can, even though I don't think that I'll ever get truly to the bottom of it. I think the journey itself is important. And then the last thing that keeps me motivated in this is that I just can't stand the idea of getting a day job. I don't know how I could possibly, I'm completely ruined for that sort of thing. So I better find a way to make a living by following my intellectual obsessions, which is what this happens to be.
And let's leave on this. There's a couple of things I just want to get out of the way. Number one, you're a publisher now, man. And,
that's right.
And we're in the internet age. How are book sales going when the bookstores are closing down? How are you doing with that?
Well enough. I'm not ever going to be a millionaire at this, but I'm able to sell my own books. I do enough. And I sell books by other authors, and I do my best to do very, very well for them and give them a great, great deal. And people still buy books. Increasingly, ebooks are more common than paperbacks, but I create ebooks for every book that I publish, and they do well. If the business model changes one day and people don't buy books, I'll have to figure something out, I suppose. For me, the thing is, I have to figure out a way to devote myself to this subject full time. I can't do this as a part-time thing. That's not me. So I have to come up with a way, literally, to live in this field. Some people would look at this and think, oh, well, he's lost his credibility because he's making money doing this. Well, that's true, but for me, I've thrown myself into this as a business venture so that I can devote myself to it full time. That is exactly, literally, the reason I do what I do. That's the reason I've gone into publishing. And I don't like, and plus I've always had an independent streak. I don't like the idea of going to a publisher begging for some royalty when I can own my product, control my product, and get a profit instead of a royalty. I think, why not?
Is it richarddolanpress.com?
Yeah. It used to be Keyhole Publishing for years, and I changed it. I rebranded it, I guess, to my name, Richard Dolan Press.
And what have you got coming out? What's on the horizon?
Several things, actually. I've got a number of authors who have just shown me some fairly complete, good-looking books that I will probably have out.
Ryan Sprague, what's up with his book? Is that one of them?
Yeah, Ryan Sprague is a young, very, very intelligent and brilliant young man who's doing a book on. I read parts of it. It's excellent well written, basically on contemporary ufology, and I think his philosophical thoughts on the UFO subject. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of that. There is a book that I'll be publishing by my friend and colleague Mike Cleland, which is just going to be a shattering book on the nature of some of the esoteric aspects of abduction and encounter. And
right on.
I'm kind of blown away by what Mike has written. I've got 2 books that I'm coming out with in the very near future. One is my 3rd volume of UFOs in a National Security State. I am working on it. Another book is, I don't want to mention it yet. It's not a UFO book, but it's probably going to be the most explosive book I've ever done. And it's actually energizing me. It's taking all of my attention right now.
Oh, man, you're going to leave us
Surprise.
with that? Okay.
Have to, yeah. As we get a little closer, I'll gladly talk about it. But I will say this, not since I did my first book started researching that 20 years ago, have I felt this revolutionized in my thinking and this disturbed by what I've been delving into is what I'm looking at right now.
And we'll be seeing you at Contact in the Desert. I can't believe it's only 6 weeks away. And by the
That's
way,
right.
I don't know if you know this. You're going to do your presentation, but I'm going to moderate a panel that you're on.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that. And we got, I'll let you know, I don't know if you know this yet. We got the time moved. It's not at 8:30 in the morning on Saturday. It's actually 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Much better.
Yeah, and I did that for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, honestly, 8:30, I might not show up.
Me
and
neither.
I have to be dragged in my jammies.
No, that's 2 of us. Trust me on that one. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Richard. And again, always a pleasure. And tell everybody that is not KGRA when to listen to you.
Yes. First of all, my website is richarddolanpress.com. I just want people to check that out. I've got a lot of my own writings, books, authors' books, other authors there. I have a weekly radio program called The Richard Dolan Show, which is on KGRA Radio at kgraradio.com. And that's from 8 till 10 Eastern every Monday night. Monday night.
And what's great about your show, and I'll tell all of our listeners, because I listen to it as often as I can as I'm prepping for my show, because it's on right before I go on the air, is you don't, it's you on the microphone.
It's just me.
Yeah.
That's
it. And
That's
I sit there and I get sucked in. I don't know how you do it, first off. That's tough. But it's your mind going straight into the microphone. And that's it. It's an amazing show to listen to.
It is. It's like a weekly intellectual lovemaking session. I don't know how else to describe it. It's really crazy.
Do you feel cleansed after? Yeah.
I do. I feel it's a good experience. I used to have guests on, and I'm not averse to it. I do have guests every now and then, and I've had some excellent ones. But normally I'm most comfortable just going in and using it as my own sort of exploration. And I do that for 2 hours a week. And it's a fun, it's a little bit of work, but it's worth it, and I enjoy it.
No, it's an amazing thing. So everybody should just go check it out. It's just the mind of Richard, man. It's the mind of Richard. You want to know what ticks? Just go and listen, because you're just pouring your heart out. And you have a way of connecting your frontal lobe to your jaw. You don't pause. It's just thoughts pouring out. It's just an amazing show to listen to. So
I really appreciate that, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, man. All the best. We'll be seeing you very soon. Excited. And have a safe flight tomorrow morning. Sleep on the plane.
Yes, indeed.
I'll talk to you. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Richard Dolan, everybody. Wow. Great show. I wanted to leave you guys. Thank you, Richard. And he's on his way to the Ozark Mountain UFO Conference, which is kicking off this Friday. Don't forget that Race Hobbs is going to be there as well. And I think he just actually disclosed that John Burroughs is going to show up with Linda Moulton Howe is already scheduled to speak. But as you know, Linda and John have been working together. So that will be... if that is indeed what's happening, that is a huge surprise. If you are in the area, you need to go and attend that conference. It's excellent every year. And I was talking to Race, and I think they're doing some kind of crazy... Can I say this, Race? They have an outside bar. I said it, Race. I said it. I said it. But I wish we could attend, and we will certainly be doing that next year. Anyway, thank you so much, Richard. I wanted to leave everybody with a couple of things really quick, some notes here. This first one, apparently, the NSA's massive surveillance problem right now with Snowden wasn't the first. It was modeled after a precursor that ran from, check this, 1992. That's right, 1992 until 2013. According to the USA Today, it was just disclosed that that program was called the USTO, the USTO, because it monitored almost every American's calls from the U.S. to other countries. It was a joint initiative by the Justice Department and the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, which began as a way to keep tabs on Colombian drug cartels and their supply routes. Since then, it grew in scope thanks in part to a powerful computer that was provided by the Pentagon to cover all international calls made around 116 countries worldwide, including Canada, Mexico, Asia, Europe, Central and South America. The group was only dissolved after Edward Snowden came public with the NSA secrets in 2013. That is wrong. That's the one thing I got to say. You know, I've been outspoken about Snowden over the years. But that is worth everything right there. Just that knowledge. Outrage. I want to leave you with this, too, as well. 2,000 miles might seem like a long way to go for fried chicken. But I love Canada. I love my good friends to the north. Two men from Canada who took their sons on a journey to the original home of Kentucky Fried Chicken say it's a trip they'll never forget. The Times-Tribune reports that this was the third trip to the Harlan Sanders Cafe and Museum for Brian Lufty, one of the fathers who piled up four sons into a van for their 34-hour pilgrimage from Montreal, Quebec. That's right. His tales of his earlier visits for Kentucky Fried Chicken inspired the family to head south. The friends left last Thursday traveling to Colonel Sanders' birthplace and burial place before arriving at the Corbin restaurant Saturday afternoon this past weekend. For the three sons, it was the first time they had ever tasted KFC. Lufty's son Jesse said, and I'm quoting, "It was delicious." I love Canada. Now, I was talking earlier with Richard about this parent disclosure about life being discovered out there within the next 10 years. And NASA's Kepler mission has already discovered, I discussed this earlier, 1,000 exoplanets. But when I think, when I read between the lines on this, and I want to emphasize this, there's something going on, because if water is indeed what makes a planet potentially habitable, and it's water, then why aren't we doing something with Mars? It's just sitting there, unless they're doing it behind our backs. And I'll leave you with this. Drones have been used to patrol African wildlife refugees for a time with good success. Drones, for example, help conservationists reduce the number of rhino poaching deaths by 65% during the course of a 2-year program at a park in South Africa. But the Air Shepherd team believes it can do better with its multifaceted approach. Now, check this out. powerful predictive software developed by the University of Maryland mathematicians provides their foundation. The software analyzes historical data about a particular area, such as a poaching location, times, weather specifics, environmental conditions, ranger availability, and a couple of other things. But using this information, the software predicts where poachers are likely to strike next. When the poachers are spotted, armed rangers are deployed to intercept them before damage is done. I love drones, but they need to take it one step further. They need to arm one of those suckers. Poaching would end right then. It'd be done. It would be over. Just once. Just do it once. Shoot one of those guys in the head. That's it. I got to say thank you to Richard Dolan. Great night tonight. Fantastic evening. And tomorrow night is Fader Nights. Open lines all evening long. Fade to Black is produced by Rita Kamarian. Shows produced by Hilton J. Palm, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Method of Signaling. Music by Doug Aldridge. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. KGRA, The Planet. Tomorrow night is Fader Night. Open lines. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I want everybody to be safe. See ya.